Good morning. Today is Monday, February the 2nd, 2026. This is our regularly scheduled meeting for the Cosmetology and Barber Examiners Board. First of all, I want to thank everybody that is participating remotely, and that does include many of our board members, my team. Several of us are here in the office, and everyone that has had this winter storm impact them. I hope you and your families are safe. It's been very difficult. I don't think we quite expected what we got. So thank you again for making this a priority so that those applicants that are waiting can proceed and not have to wait, so that we can address some proposed rules and move forward. So I genuinely, we've got with me Angela and Joe here, and then board members here physically present are Jeffrey Moran and Marquise Martin. Those of you that are home, hopefully you're safe, and we will go ahead and get started. The first order of business is roll call. I will need to do all of our motions by roll call vote. So make sure if you motion and second it to unmute yourself if you're home, unmute yourself if you're here, and then I will go through all 9 or 10 members that I think we have before we can proceed. Thank you again. Let me start by Susan Arnold. Ms. Arnold, are you with us? No. Mr. Perry Baldwin? No. Ms. Burnett Carlton?
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Anita Charlton is not with us. Ms. Monica Lemons?
Present.
Thank you. Mr. David McElreath is not with us for the meeting. Mr. Marquise Martin?
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Jeffrey Moran?
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Lane Petty?
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Becky Russell?
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Amy Tanksley?
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Lori Turner?
Present.
And last but not least, Ms. Tamika Turner?
Present.
Thank you. We do have quorum. All right, members, thank you again for making this a priority. We do have quorum in order to proceed. Individuals that wish to participate, ask questions, give us feedback, they will be able to do so. The WebEx link is on our website, always available to everybody, but they'll be able to join us and as part of the new business toward the end. And so I will make sure to give plenty of time for that. Members, you all received the agenda emailed to you. It is also posted on the website. If you have any concerns or changes, please let me know. Otherwise, I would need a motion to accept the agenda as it's been presented.
I make a motion to accept.
I have a motion by Monica Lemons to accept the agenda and a second by Lane Petty. Is that correct, Ms. Petty?
Correct.
Thank you. Give me a minute. And I will go through roll call vote for those that are present. Ms. Burnett Carlton?
Yes.
Monica Lemons?
Yes.
Marquise Martin?
Yes.
Jeffrey Moran?
Yes.
Lane Petty?
Yes.
Becky Russell?
Yes.
Amy Tanksley?
Yes.
Lori Turner?
Yes.
And Tamika Turner.
Yes.
Thank you, members. Also via email, you all received the December 2025 minutes for review. If there are any amendments, please let me know. Otherwise, those minutes need to be approved and seconded so we can add them to the website.
I make a motion we approve.
I second it.
To accept.
We have a motion by Lori Turner and a second by Mr. Marquise Martin, I believe. No, I apologize. Mr. Jeffrey Moran. By roll call vote. Burnett Carlton.
Yes, I accept.
Thank you, Monica Lemons.
Yes.
Marquise Martin.
Yes.
Jeffrey Moran.
Yes.
Lane Petty.
Yes.
Becky Russell.
Yes.
Amy Tanksley.
Yes.
Lori Turner.
Yes.
And Tamika Turner.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, members. First order of business, and again, for those of you that are participating virtually, the school items are listed in SharePoint. Our 2 members that are here have them in iPads. I'm going to start with Confidence College of Cosmetology. This is a change in location. I know Ms. Courtney Burnett is probably with us. First item, just as a quick recap, we have two change in locations of schools. As you know, these are schools already licensed but moving. And we have one school that was previously licensed and is again in a new location and reinstating, if you will, or reapplying for a license. The only reason I bring this up is with us doing roll call vote and participating virtually, it's nice, sort of nice to not have 13 schools. We would be here a long time just with the motions. The three, I think, are going to be simpler. And also, again, they're used to our process. Their documents looked very good, so you should be able to go through them. But they are also all three apprenticeship schools, just something to keep in mind as you review everything. All three of these are either moving to be able to be apprenticeship or have changed locations or are starting their path in apprenticeship only as the path to offer the curriculum. Having said that, Ms. Courtney Bennett is participating. She'll be happy to answer any questions you have. This school is located in Chuckey, Tennessee. They will be offering apprenticeship only, as I previously mentioned. You have the application, floor plan, enrollment agreement, catalog, and contingency plan before you. Ms. Russell, if you would like to lead the meetings like you do, I'm thrilled. If you would like me to, you tell me.
Well, I will unmute to ask questions. You can go ahead and run the meeting since you're there in person.
Perfect. Sounds great. Then I will let you go through the questions and I will run the rest of it. Thank you, ma'am.
Do we have someone participating for Confidence College?
You do. Courtney Bennett is on. She's unmuted now. So she is the school owner and is participating virtually. Yes, ma'am.
All right, Miss Courtney, I have a few questions for you. Can you explain let's see. I was having a hard time understanding your weeks or months to graduation. You've got 15 months, and then directly below that, you've got 22.5 months. Can you explain which one of those is correct?
Yes, ma'am. That must be a typo where we are switching over. Well, first of all, let me say thank you all for still trying to make this meeting work. I really appreciate it. But when I was redoing my paperwork for apprenticeship, that must be left over from the traditional course that I failed to delete for the 15 months. The apprenticeship course would be the 22.5 with 150% time frame.
So would they be able to complete it in less time, like at 100% time frame? Would that be at 15 months?
Yes, ma'am. Our phase one is based on 24 to 25 hours per week, averaging roughly 100 hours a month. And then so that would take them, the exact 7.5 months for the 750 hours. And then, of course, once they get to phase two and their schedule is with their mentor, then at that point, they could potentially move faster. But if they stay on the 25 hours per week, would put them at 15 months.
Okay, I think maybe you can leave both of those amounts there, the 15 and the 22.5, but just label them accordingly. So label them at 100%, it would be 15 months, because we definitely want them to know you can potentially get done in 15 months, but they are given up to 22.5.
Okay, I'll make that more clear.
Okay. Your curriculum matches exactly, except for instructor. I need you to go back and look at your instructor's curriculum. There's a requirement for you to have an exact amount of hours in
within the 6-month time frame.
No, it's not about that. It's what is taught by or taught to an instructor. Like there has to be so many hours in, and it's slipping my mind exactly what it says, but it's classroom management and lesson planning or something to that effect. And
Okay.
Your hours don't match exactly. Just in the curriculum for the others are correct.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. I'll fix that.
You've provided us with a blueprint for a school inside of a salon. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. It's a standalone building. There are two separate entrances. So there is a salon entrance that goes just into the salon, and then there is a school that goes just into the classroom for the school side. There is a wall that separates them, and there's a door inside of that wall. There's a shared restroom, but they are two separate facilities in the same building.
And will you have students attend class in that building?
In the school side, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Roxana, I think that we need probably legal to take a look at this. In the law 62-4-125 Part C, where a school and shop are operated in the same building, there shall be separate entrances, exits, and separate restroom facilities for each business. Would that fall within the law to have it like this?
That's a good question. I believe in connecting with Miss Bennett, she said there is a separate door that separates it from the shop, so that's a given. I think the restrooms, there's that flexibility as long as the restrooms are available. Some of our schools could be in a shopping area where they wouldn't necessarily have a restroom right there, but available to them. So I think there's flexibility for the restroom perspective. With our other apprenticeship-only schools, I don't know that we focused as much on the restroom being shared as much as the complete separation from the shop. Does that sound like what we've been seeing?
I just wanted to make sure that by law that we're following the way the law is written. I don't really have a problem with this setup or the fact that they share a restroom. I just want to know by law, can we make that determination?
Joe is looking at it. So hold on just a second, please.
Becky, this is Amy. This is apprentice only, so is it just a classroom area within the salon?
Yes, ma'am.
So I think also we would need to look at precedent because I know we've had previous schools that we've approved with this setup, and I don't recall if there was a separate entrance or the restroom situation.
Correct. I believe that that's a case. We have a school that's rented space within a church, and they have the shared restroom. But to Ms. Russell's point, I think the restrooms never been an issue. They can share it. It's the separation of the school from the shop that I think you all have been very specific to. And I believe from Ms. Bennett that there is a separation. The shop doesn't just flow into the school. Is that correct, Ms. Bennett?
Yes, ma'am. There's two separate entrances.
Thank you. The rule that we're talking about specifically is 0440-01, and then that is -.017, and it states the board shall have the authority to approve a school without a restroom facility located therein if the school is located within a mall, strip shopping center, or other commercial property, and the school owner can demonstrate shared public restroom facilities are standard for the location, is specifically how that rule reads.
Joe, and according to the law, because this one was written into law, the one that I was reading from, 62-4-125, I just want to make sure that we're not overstepping. I don't honestly have a problem with this and then sharing the restroom. I just want to make sure that we legally can do it because of the way the law was written.
Thank you for holding. Joe's read through that particular law and yes, we can make it work. I think this is how we've adjusted to the apprenticeship pieces and the shops trying to be next door, but not have the apprenticeship school in the same location. There's a division and they're sharing the restroom. But he has reviewed that, Ms. Russell, if you're okay with it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
You only have one classroom, but you are offering 3 different curriculums. Can you tell me how that would work out with this classroom?
Yes, ma'am. So we have currently 2 instructors and 1 junior instructor. And so we do hybrid where we utilize StreamYard. It's similar to Zoom. So we would alternate sharing the classroom, and during the times that the class that is not on campus, they would be online with another instructor.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your contingency plan. Does the academy that you have partnered with for your contingency plan, do they offer the apprenticeship program?
Yes, ma'am. Miss Donna Byington, she offers both traditional and apprenticeship courses for all courses.
Okay, perfect. And then the last one is probably more of a note for you rather than within our laws or rules, but you have it listed that PSI testing sites, the theory only, it appears that you're telling them that they can only go to Johnson City for theory and they can actually go to any testing site. I think it might be important to make that clear that they, while there is a site in Johnson City, that they could go elsewhere because sometimes it is difficult to get a test date.
Yes, ma'am. I can make that more clear. I just listed that one as that one's literally, 15 minutes from us. But I can make that more clear where that they can test anywhere in Tennessee.
All right. That's all the questions that I have.
Thank you so much, Ms. Russell. This is Roxana again. Members, if you have any other questions, you can raise your hand. You can unmute yourself. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion, but I want to make sure everybody has time.
A motion to approve with change?
I motion to accept.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Monica Lemons, a second by Mr. Marcus Martin to accept, and it is pending. I've noted 2 different things that Ms. Bennett will be correcting and sending directly to me. So that is our current motion by roll call order in order to accept the change in location for this school and proceed once I get the updated documents. Let me start by Ms. Bernetta Carlton,
Yes.
Monica Lemons,
Yes.
Marquise Martin,
Yes.
Jeffrey Moran,
Yes.
Lane Petty,
Yes.
Becky Russell,
Yes.
Amy Tanksley,
Yes.
Lori Turner,
Yes.
and Tamika Turner.
Yes.
Thank you. And members, real quick before we go on to Legacy Beauty Institute, this is also a change in location and turn it over to Ms. Priscilla Heron. We have a school that has joined us, so I do want to welcome them real quick, see where they're from, and applaud their decision to come in person. So that is always cool. Good morning. Who is the instructor?
She's not here yet, but I'm a junior instructor.
Junior instructor. Welcome. What school are you all from?
TCAT and Hickman.
Okay, welcome. If you all want to come up front, we don't fight. If you're comfortable there, stay there. I think you can see, but we also have the screen that catches the whole meeting. And if you have questions when we get to the new business, you'll be able to stand up here and ask, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, members. one of the TCATs is here. And I, again, given everything we've been through, that's awesome that we've got students here participating. So I will continue with Legacy Beauty Institute. Ms. Priscilla Heron, I believe, is with us participating virtually. The school is located in Milan. They are offering, again, their coursework only through apprenticeship. You have the application, floor plan, enrollment agreement, catalog, and contingency plan. Ms. Russell, I'm happy to turn it over to you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Miss Heron. Would you like to tell us a bit about your school?
Ms. Heron, you've muted yourself again. Go ahead and try that one more time.
Can you
Thank
hear
you.
me?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. My laptop is going crazy right now. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, ma'am. You go right ahead and explain to the members a little bit about your school if you like.
Okay, Legacy Beauty Institute. I'm located here in Malin, Tennessee. I am a now apprenticeship and traditional school. I'm relocating for the betterment of my students, and I'm just glad that you guys could meet with us today to get the ball rolling.
Thank you so much. I have a couple of questions, but I'm also having computer issues, so please give me just a second while I get my presentation loaded. Other board members, if you all have questions, you all can get started. I just lost my presentation for just a second.
Thank you, Becky. Members, if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. And I listed this as a apprenticeship only school. So thank you very much, Ms. Heron, for correcting it. I'm looking at your floor plan, and yes, I meant to say that yours is traditional as well as apprenticeship.
I have a question. How
Yes.
far away from the old spot to the new spot? Just roughly.
It's maybe 2 streets over. It's right around the corner.
Thank you.
My school was located downtown. So we're about 2 streets over.
Okay. Can you tell me about your specific class times? It appears that your school is open from 9 to 9, but I did not see specific class times for each class.
Okay, so for the daytime, our class, do you need just the times or you need days? Because we're open Monday through Friday now. The class time for the morning is 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then nights is 5 p.m. to 9 p.m.
So your day class will be full-time and night class will be part-time. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
We'll just need to make, you will need to make a note somewhere within your paperwork where it breaks down when your students are supposed to be in class. That way, when they're signing their documentation, they know that if I'm signing up for a full-time class, and this is the time frames, or part-time, what time frames those are.
Okay, yes, ma'am. I can do that.
You have some discrepancy in some of your, we're looking to see that you clearly identify costs and charges, and you have a registration fee, and I think it's your page 9 and 10 or 10 and 11. Anyway, there are two different amounts for registration fees, so you will need to rectify that. It doesn't matter to us if it's the lesser or the more, but it does need to clearly identify the fees for them.
Okay. Let's see. On page 10, where it says the non-refundable registration.
I think it's your page 9 and 10 do not match. It's either your
Okay.
10 or your 10 and 11. It says one on one page and one amount on one page and one on the other page.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. I see it. I will correct that.
I was able to locate your refund policy, and you must have refunds returned within 45 days. Yours says 30, which is within 45, so I'm not complaining about it, but just a note that it needs to be within 45. So your contingency plan, the school that it appears that you have partnered with is an hour and a half away. Is that correct?
Yes. It's about an hour. It's in Memphis, Tennessee.
I was looking at the addresses to figure out how far away it was.
Yes.
And is there a school that's closer to you that might be a better partner for this? That, to me, would make a hardship on a student to have to travel.
I've researched. I can check again. When they register, I do go through everything. A lot of my students haven't, I let them know just in case, make sure everything is clear. I haven't had an issue so far, with in case anybody have to. But I can definitely look and see. It's just in this area. I don't know if there is, but I can definitely look and see.
Okay. There may not be. I just, if there were another partner school, and you can list more than one partner school if you need to with the contingency plan. I just know that might be a hardship.
Okay. I know that I will definitely look into
don't
that.
close. We hope that nothing happens that you would need the contingency plan. So, on your page 4, that's our page 45 board members. Sorry, just kidding. Your page 14, maybe. Not sure about our page, but in the place, it says placement services.
Yes.
Students are encouraged to find their own apprenticeship sites, and that is something that the school must do, because that's a relationship that you form with a individual that meets the criteria. You need to be in control of that.
Okay.
And I know that you have given us some relationships that you have established with apprenticeships for apprenticeship, and that's
Yes.
great. But we don't want you to leave that on the student to have to find their own apprenticeship site.
Okay. I can change that. And I do. Most of the apprentice that I do, I don't do a lot, but when I do them, I help them. They really don't have to look. So I will word that differently. I will take that off.
I was looking at your floor plan, and I know that an inspector will come out and kind of verify all these things for us, but I'm not seeing an area for manicuring. Do you have a manicuring area, or is that something that you only teach as an apprentice?
Yes, I do have a manicuring area, and it was supposed to be on here. Is it not?
I may have overlooked it. I just wanted to be sure that you have an area for manicuring, even for cosmetology.
Where it says it's the 16 by 10 room, that's the manicure room by the facial room. I apologize. It was supposed to be written in there.
The inspector, like I said, will check that. I just wanted to make sure you weren't blindsided when they came for an inspection. On your page 15, under scholarships, you have stated that a scholarship may be retracted at any time without cause. And I find that kind of difficult because without cause, you have to have no reason that you would retract a scholarship. So if you waited until their very last day and they thought that their scholarship was going to cover, their tuition, and then you retract it, then they are left holding the bag, having to come up with that scholarship, the amount of the scholarship on their last day of class. So you want to explain the without cause part of this?
That must have been a typo. because we definitely give them a cause with the scholarships because we have businesses. A lot of businesses I partner with that donate to help with scholarships. So I need to reword that. I'm sorry, I don't. They definitely will be given calls if it is retracted, which I haven't had that happen, but I can reword that also.
We just don't want them to be blindsided.
And a lot of
Your
times I'm sorry, a lot of times when we get scholarships, like we have like resumes, essays and stuff that they have to write out. So I need to make that more clear. That would be the only reason why, if there was a scholarship on the table, that they didn't receive it if they didn't do what was qualified to receive the scholarship. So I can reword that.
your contingency plan with your partner institution. Let's see. It looks like they do not offer manicuring, natural hair, or lashes, and they don't mention that they offer the apprenticeship. Have you checked with them to make sure that all of your folks that go through your school that they could go to that institution?
Yes, I did contact her, and she did say that she did. I can recheck and make sure. But as far as I know, she was offering those. She did agree, and she knows everything that we're offering. So I can double check and make sure with her as
And it's
well.
really important that the apprenticeship part, because those apprenticeship hours do not transfer into a traditional program. So if they're not offering the apprenticeship, then that will not work for your contingency plan.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm pretty sure she does offer apprenticeship. We just spoke, but I can double check and make sure.
Okay. Those are all the notes that I have for you, board members, if you have additional questions.
Thank you so much, as always, Ms. Russell. Members, are there any other questions for Ms. Priscilla? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to accept with the amendments, and I've made notes of all the different things, including those that have to be corrected. So if approved with the amendments, it would be once I receive those updates directly from Ms. Herron.
Make a motion
May.
we accept with amendments.
Second it.
Second it.
Thank you. I believe the motion is coming from Ms. Lane Petty. The second is from Mr. Jeffrey Moran that is here by roll call vote to accept the application once the corrections have been sent my way. Ms. Bernetta Carlton,
Yes.
Ms. Monica Lemons,
Yes.
Mr. Marquise Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Jeffrey Moran,
Yes.
Ms. Lane Petty,
Yes.
Ms. Becky Russell.
Yes.
Ms. Amy Tanksley,
Yes.
Ms. Lori Turner,
Yes.
Tamika Turner.
Yes.
Thank you, members. Our last school, I believe Ms. Anderson is on the call. Ms. Kimberly Anderson is opening a new school. I will give you all a minute to get to that section. She had a prior school in 2021. It was an instructor-only school. You will see from the documents, this will be offering different coursework. It is through apprenticeship only. You've got the floor plan, enrollment agreement, contingency plan before you. Ms. Anderson's name might be familiar to many of you. She also teaches one of our approved continuing education courses for our educators. So I will turn it over to you, Ms. Russell, and to Ms. Anderson.
Ms. Anderson, welcome. And could you tell us a bit about your school?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you guys for having me. I can't see myself on the screen, so I don't know if it's something I've done. But I am Kimberly Anderson, 27 years licensed professional, 21-year instructor, salon owner, and I'm just basically taking all of my experience and expertise over the years from being a platform artist to an educator to a salon professional, and I am opening an apprentice school in Memphis, Tennessee to serve those that are in this local area. It is a hybrid school, apprentice only, and the programs I'll be offering is cosmetology, currently aesthetics, and the eyelash specialist as well as instructor.
Thank you. We'll start with a couple of questions. And the first one is going to be on the front page, I suppose, of your student catalog. It shows barbering as one of the pictures there, and it says barbering on it. Will you be offering barbering?
In the future, yes, I will.
Okay. I would suggest that you remove that barbering until which time you're approved for the barbering
Okay,
portion.
no problem.
All right. It appears that you have 2 classrooms. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. The apprentice portion will be operated in a salon where there are 2 classrooms. Of course, there are individual entrances, but there is a shared restroom. But the days of class, primarily, most of them will be during non-salon hours, and the salon is set up on a suite style. So there are suites where individuals work, but there's also rooms for classroom space as well.
Okay. And how many instructors do you have?
I have a team of 10 people.
Okay. I just wanted to ensure that you have enough instructors to teach all of these separate things.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. I have a team currently of 10 educators that are all well versed in the subject matters that we're currently teaching. Some of them work contractual, but it just depends on what the need is. But I do have a team already, an educational team that I've had for a number of years. All licensed instructors in all of the disciplines that Tennessee offers.
Perfect. I'm trying to get to a page because I made myself a note, but I think that there's something wrong with your weeks and months to graduation.
Okay.
It looks like it's on your page 19, and I'm trying to get there.
I'll get there as you're getting.
If I'm not mistaken, and I don't know that I've made a note exactly which ones, but I think cosmetology was correct, but aesthetics may be incorrect. I think that may have been the one incorrect. If you'll just double check that for me and make sure that the weeks or months to graduation are correct.
Okay. Well, I think to my understanding, it's time and a half. Is that correct? Is that the law for apprentice?
It is, but I think that it's the 7 to 8 months.
Okay.
Something
Based
about
on the hours that are offered, is that what you're saying?
Yes, and it may be correct. I had made myself a note that you needed to fix the months to graduation, but I'm not really sure other than that. So if you'll just double check those may be correct. If they work out in hours to 2 months, then leave them the way that they are. Just if you will, just double check those for me.
Okay. And I think I gave the range of 7 to 8 months because they're getting 100 hours a week for the most part. And that could vary between, the holidays or when school is actually out. And that's why I put that range there. I'm not sure if that was proper to do, but I put it there and I felt like if it was something I needed to correct, that you guys would let me know if that was accurate or not.
That may have been my note, is that it should be 7.5 months.
Okay.
Maybe that was, maybe we just figured it out.
So is the range okay, or should I?
You should say, I don't think that I can do it within 7 months. I think it has to be 7.5.
Okay.
your curriculums, you've added sexual assault training to that, and that is not listed in our curriculum. You've listed it to all of them. And then the instructor portion, you've broken it down and told what they're going to learn, but there does not end up being 100 hours in lesson planning and motivation specifically, as it's required in our curriculum.
Okay, so as it relates to the domestic violence, I was under the impression, according to the rules or the law, that that was something that they had to obtain, and it was to be a part of the coursework.
So
Is that
domestic
not correct?
violence, the
Yes.
domestic violence,
It is, I'm sorry to interrupt. It is not part of the coursework. It is a requirement before they can obtain a license. And so it's been there since
Okay.
2022, and all the schools have been really asked and encouraged that that training be done at the school, because otherwise your students will be delayed being licensed. And so it is not 20 minutes out of the 1,500 hours, right? Those 20, 25 minutes of the course aren't part of the hours there, but there's something you need to cover. And it's, again, it's less than an hour. So it really doesn't amount to a significant number of hours. Does that make sense?
Yes, so I think are you encouraging me to remove that under the curriculum and just offer that leading up to the
Graduation.
clocking of hours and the graduation?
It's part of your graduation. Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
and my concern was not the domestic violence, it was sexual assault, because you have that added to it, but it is specific to domestic violence, but not sexual assault.
Okay. I will remove that. Thank you.
Can you tell me a little bit about your virtual classes and how those will, how students will participate in them?
Yes, ma'am. So the virtual classes are live. Students must be on camera, on screen, along with the instructor. We go through a number of delivery methods throughout the day, from lecture to group activities. During that course time, and the way it's currently broken up with the subject matters that we offer, they're on a rotating schedule where there's some in person and some that are virtual. And of course, they coincide with the hours that are going on in the salon.
All right. I may have overlooked it, but I did not see a backup for timekeeping. Can you tell me what your backup method is for timekeeping?
Yes, ma'am. So our backup method for timekeeping, we have a electronic clock. We have a digital sign-in with SEMA, and then we also have a manual sign-in. And so those are the three areas, the three ways. And then we also encourage the students, of course, to keep up with their hours.
Okay. And then full-time and part-time hours being kept separately. Are you doing all full-time or all part-time?
I'm doing all part-time, but the files will be separate according to the discipline.
Okay. And then
Russell, I'm so sorry. Just to give you peace of mind, that she does have the breakdown of the tracking hours and the backup in the third. That's on her page 28. Just wanted to give you that
Perfect.
piece. Thank you.
And then the last note that I have, can you tell me in your paperwork where it says that the instructors need to be licensed 3 years prior to the instructor course?
I may not have that. I may not have put that in there, even though I know it. I know it to be true. I don't know if I put that in there.
I thought maybe I just overlooked it, but if it's not in there, if you will please just go
There's
to
a
where
possibility it's
curriculum.
not. But I actually thought I did, because I definitely know that to be true.
If you'll just add that near the instructor's curriculum or somewhere where it's talking about instructor information, in order to for them to be licensed as an instructor, they have to be licensed in their field for 3 years.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That is all the questions that I have for you, board members, if you have additional questions.
I just have one question regarding the hours per week. Did you say 100 hours? They get 100 hours per week?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a limit, right, of 48 hours per week, and that's for full time. And I think you say you're going to be
No,
doing
not 100
part-time.
hours per week. I'm sorry. 100 hours per month. I'm sorry. 25
Okay.
hours per week.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. That was my only question.
And Ms. Russell, the information is there regarding the instructor. It's her page 13, needing to be licensed for 3 years. It's where she's got instructor program overview. She does have it in that paragraph.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Members, are there any other questions? I don't see any hands raised. Any other questions here? I would entertain a motion to approve. I do have a notation of, I believe, 3 items that need to be updated. Make sure that the hours match weeks or months, that the barbering is removed until it's added at a future date, and that domestic violence is taken off the curriculum because our approved rules curriculum does not include it, and added to the graduation. Pending those amendments, if I missed anything, let me know, but I'd entertain a motion.
She also needs to correct the curriculum in the instructor area to be 100 hours in lesson planning and motivation.
Thank you.
I make a motion with the changes made and gotten back to you that we accept.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Monica Lemons, a second by Lane Petty. By roll call vote. Ms. Burnett Carlton,
Yes.
Ms. Monica Lemons,
Yes.
Mr. Marquise Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Jeffrey Moran,
Yes.
Ms. Lane Petty,
Yes.
Ms. Becky Russell,
Yes.
Ms. Amy Tanksley,
Yes.
Ms. Lori Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Tamika Turner.
Yes.
Thank you, members. Thank you very much. Ms. Anderson, you can send me those updates. All 3 of these schools will have an inspection when you are ready to be inspected, and you let me know. So we will proceed to our next applicant. This is a continuing education course approval request by Ms. Stephanie Brown. I believe Ms. Brown is with us. Member, she is requesting to be approved for March 16th and 17th. So I know she too is happy that the meeting is taking place. She had a couple of schools interested in having all their instructors take it at the same time. But in any case, it'll be open obviously for everyone. You have the items before you. She has been approved as a provider in the past, so she's just requesting those specific dates. And if you have any questions, I will turn it over to her if she's on the call with us. Ms. Brown, are you with us? She is not, and members, as you know, in December, I don't believe anyone or hardly anyone from our CE providers, because it's a standard process, were with us. She has presented her agenda items, and just if you haven't had a chance to look at the board's website, we are slowly changing all kinds of things on the website to be ADA compliant. The continuing education for our instructors looks very different. It is not a PDF document that you can open. It's actually live on the page. It looks really good. The agenda they present is actually the website page. So we will add this if we have a motion to approve those dates she's requested.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll
Thank you.
second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Jeffrey Moran, a second by Lane Petty to approve Ms. Brown's session, and it is the educator's success by roll call vote to approve this new date. Pardon me. Ms. Burnetta Carlton,
Yes.
Ms. Monica Lemons,
Yes.
Mr. Marquise Martin,
Yes.
Ms. Jeffrey Moran,
Yes.
Ms. Lane Petty,
Yes.
Ms. Becky Russell,
Yes.
Ms. Amy Tanksley,
Yes.
Ms. Lori Turner,
Yes.
And Ms. Tamika Turner.
Yes.
Thank you, members. We are going to move on to our applicants to test. You have on the iPads to review. Our members that are participating virtually would not have this in front of them. They do through SharePoint. We have 11 applicants for felony. I will read their names on the record. They have all presented the information if they're incarcerated from the facility, recommending them their own written statement. And then the board, of course, always does a 2-year agreed probationary order for the licenses approved. Those individuals before you are Kathleen Allen, David Cummings, Ashley Crowder, Kendrea Green, Keyshawn Jenkins, Raymond McDonald, Taylor Quick, Tanika Rogers, Jamie Tice, Joe Whitaker, and Delvante Williams. A couple of quick pointers from these individuals. Ms. Allen and Ms. Green have already been approved. They are not at one of our TDOC facilities, and so their licenses have been approved. So when you look at their documents, it includes the order they've already signed. And then just a quick note on Mr. Whitaker, he was licensed in 2020 as a master barber while serving his time. I had the pleasure of speaking with him last week. He has an active license since 2020. He has proceeded to complete the 300 hours instructor portion and is requesting the upgrade to his instructor. He and I spoke only because of the continuing education requirement. I wanted to make sure that he didn't miss out on that, but he will be getting out soon and is very excited about being able to work at a school and teach. He's also been helping teaching just like a barber instructor assistant would in a normal school. He's been doing some of that. And so I just wanted to kind of explain that piece. We've never approved an instructor that is in a facility, which was the reason for my conversation. I wanted to make sure he understood the C, but it's very excited to know he'll be getting out and be able to use not only his master barber license, but the instructor piece. Thank you, members. I welcome any questions you might have.
Roxana, did I overlook Mr. McDaniel's personal letter?
Give me a second and I'm trying to look. We should have, when they are incarcerated, they don't always have a personal letter. Most of the time, they would have just the cover sheet, right? In a few cases, the facility might be comfortable with them writing something. So if you don't see a cover letter from them, that would be the reason. And I'm trying to skip over to him.
Is that required?
It is not. That's a great question. So nothing really, our statute says that the individual must report a felony within the last 3 years, a felony or a misdemeanor of moral turpitude. With the facilities, we go past the 3 years because of the a different statute we have for professional conduct and character. So the board has always felt that if someone is incarcerated, we need that agreed order just to make sure that the public is protected. But nothing spells out what exactly they need to give us. The board's opinion has been and desire to have something from the school they attended. It could be also if they're coming in through reciprocity from an individual that they work with, someone that can say something about the person's character. Again, if they're out versus if they are incarcerated, it's generally that cover letter that the facility gives us. And then from them, we would like something, but most of the time for our individuals that are in a facility, we really just see their cover sheet. This particular time, we have one of the prisons that made sure they write the letters, but that actually rarely happens. I'm trying to get to Mr. McDaniel. Do you have a page on McDaniel? On page 1, oh, you don't have the iPads. I apologize. It's not numbered, but we do have the letter for Mr. McDaniel from the facility, just not for him. And that's not unusual, Ms. Russell.
Okay, I was thinking they were required to have a letter. Other than that, I have no questions about these.
Thank you, ma'am. Members, let me know if any of you have any other questions. If you do not, like I mentioned, 2 of these individuals, Ms. Allen and Ms. Green, already have signed their order. We've approved their license. They are working, so this is just to put it on the record. I would entertain a motion to approve the rest with the 2-year probationary agreed order.
I make a motion, we accept.
I second.
Thank you. I believe we have a motion from Ms. Lori Turner and a second from Ms. Monica Lemons. By roll call vote. Give me a second. Ms. Bernetta Carlton,
Yes.
Monica Lemons,
Yes.
Marquise Martin,
Yes.
Jeffrey Moran,
Yes.
Lane Petty,
Yes.
Becky Russell,
Yes.
Amy Tansley,
Yes.
Lori Turner,
Yes.
and Tamika Turner.
Yes.
Thank you, members. Staying with our items that are the applicants to take the exam, we have a request by Ms. Demetra Hogan. And give me just a minute, let me get to my right notes. Ms. Hogan completed hours at a school that has closed. The hours that she attended at Tennessee Academy of Cosmetology are between 2005 and 2006. She's provided her attendance declaration. This is a declaration that anytime we've had students with hours that go back further than what we've had a scanning system in place, that they declare what they've done. So she's provided that. It would look like she maybe started in the cosmetology curriculum, but she did 1,200 hours specific to manicuring. She is requesting the board release her manicuring hours in order for her to take the exams and join the industry. She did provide the diploma from that school that says manicuring, and the timeline fits April 2006. She also provided, and this is rare, most of our students or applicants don't have this type of documentation. So she's provided information regarding her federal student aid loans that also at least give us an idea of what was borrowed. So she is requesting permission to take the exams for manicuring. I welcome any questions if you have them, members. If not, I believe we've approved that in the past simply because the school's closed. We've been stuck a few times because we've had no proof at all that they attended. And in those cases, we wouldn't be able to. From what we see here, we've been able to see the diploma from the school, the timeline matches, and then her financial information.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
By Jeffrey Moran and a second by Monica Lemons to accept with the information provided so that we can put Ms. Hogan into the manicure exams by roll call vote. Ms. Bernetta Carlton,
Yes.
Monica Lemons,
Yes.
Mr. Marquise Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Jeffrey Moran,
Yes.
Ms. Lane Petty,
Yes.
Ms. Becky Russell,
Yes.
Ms. Amy Tansley,
Yes.
Ms. Lori Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Tamika Turner.
Yes.
Thank you so much, members. I am going to mute myself and turn it over to Mike. You all have the redacted legal report that was emailed to you. So Mike, it is all yours, sir.
Thank you, Roxana, and good morning, board. As you can see, we've got 87 cases on the legal report, 2 being represents, 14 being Barber cases, and 71 being cosmetology cases. There are a couple of items I do need to bring to the board's attention after completing the legal report. On item number 45, and I can give the board a couple of seconds to get to item number 45. My recommendation was a letter of warning for not providing a response. That respondent did provide a response basically stating that the student was terminated due to the student conduct policy and that the student's hours cannot be released until the processing of all financial aid has been completed per the student contract. So based on that response, my recommendation would be closure for item number 45. And then on item number 56, that matter has been paid by agreed citation. So item number 56 has essentially gone away. Outside of that, if the board has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I would respectfully request a motion to accept the legal report as amended due to those two items.
I had a question about case number 8.
Okay.
It said there's a keypad on the door. Have we had trouble inspecting there before?
Not on this particular individual. I don't think, I would say not on this particular one, no. But as you know, we have seen on occasion where the only way you can access is through a keypad, which would indicate it's by appointment only.
Okay, I was just wondering how our inspections are going. So I guess they're scheduling those inspections.
Chair Russell, typically what they will do is they will try to go by on multiple occasions. That's what I've seen in the past.
Okay, and I have another question, and this one is about case number 59. It says there's multiple sanitation violations. Is there a reason that we're not inducing a fee of some sort? It says no penalty.
Well, that would be my recommendation. It appears that may be the first time that they've been cited for that, just looking at the history. But if the board deems that a monetary penalty would be more appropriate, that's fine.
I guess my concern is just that it wasn't just a simple sanitation violation, but multiple sanitation violations. And this was just through a regular inspection, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
If the board would rather assess a civil penalty, I mean, that's fine with me. And I guess if the board could recommend an amount up to $1,000.
Is the letter of warning typical for this particular type of violation if it's the first offense?
Roxanne, jump in here, but my answer to that would be yes.
Yes, you are correct. I see Becky's point, though. She makes a great point in it being dirty tools, plural. Is that more than what we normally see? The letter of warning is often used in a situation where maybe between clients, you didn't have time to quickly clean up and we show up. We want to make sure that they know that that's got to be done. There's no way for us to know if it was the previous client or two, but that would be the letter of warning. Multiple tools or lots of tools could be different. So to your point, Ms. Russell, that would be fine if we added a civil penalty. I believe it because they've never had a sanitation violation is probably why that agreed citation went out for just a letter of warning. We usually when it's the second occurrence, it would be 250 if I'm not mistaken. Mike, you can correct me, but I think the dirty tools plural is what makes this look a little bit different.
I can change. I'm sorry. I can change that recommendation to authorize formal hearing and authorize settlement by consent order for the civil penalty of $250.
I'd like the other board members to weigh in. I'm not trying to get us to do something that's outside of what we normally would do. I don't know what, I mean, I think that we should make it consistent. I guess when it says multiple sanitation violations, I was thinking more, it wasn't just which it says specifically dirty tools, but I was thinking, is there dirt on the floor? The laundry's not done, or, so it says specifically dirty tools. I'm not certain that anything more than a letter of warning, if that's what we typically do, is required. Other board members, you can give your thoughts.
And Chair Russell, may I add this to it as well? Typically, when you see a notice of violation done for that, they've been verbally warned. And so then they just go ahead and cite them with the notice of violation at that point. That's typically what I see on that.
I have a question. How do we follow up after we've given them a just a warning? Is there follow up on that? And if so, is there a time frame on that?
We can add that to the recommendation to reinspect the different sanitary violations. So we can add that to the recommendation.
I'm kind of, I think kind of like Miss Russell, where she's saying that with it being multiple violations, if our job is to protect the public, I think we need to be consistent. But if there's multiple violations, I'm not so sure that I'm super comfortable with us just giving warnings if we're not following up.
That's fine. I can add that to the recommendation with the monetary penalty right now at $250 unless the board states otherwise.
I'm comfortable with the 250.
I also feel good about that. 250.
Same.
And with the reinspection?
Yes.
Yes, reinspection. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that also. I make a motion to,
If I could interrupt, I'm so sorry.
yeah.
Mike, do you want to please point out for the end, our closure, our cases that we've got kind of lumped 80 through 84, just a quick brief so the members don't miss that one. And then it looks like we have no other questions.
On 80 through 84, that's a situation out of East Tennessee specifically. Obviously, the board can read my notes on that. That is actually going into litigation monitoring, and the respondent has obtained an attorney that I am speaking with. As a matter of fact, I've been out all week with the storm, but when I got back into my emails, he and I have actually communicated, and he and I are working on an agreement, an agreed order for Chair Russell to sign at some point soon. That they're going to continue the license suspension until the criminal matters have been concluded. So basically, that one's going in litigation monitoring, but the board has the write-up that I put in there. And then once they come out, we would consider, depending on what the final conclusion of the criminal matters are, to consider authorizing a formal hearing and settlement consent order for revocation and $700 in civil penalties, because we did send an inspector out there and there was an expired individual license at that time, expired shop license, and no owner or manager present at the shop, in addition to the potential unprofessional conduct and the criminal actions. So that would be the explanation for 80 through 84.
Thank you, Mike. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Members, I didn't have anything else to add. So I would entertain, I believe, Mr. Moran, you made a motion, but I'll entertain if you wanted to change that.
No,
I
that's
just
it.
wanted to make I agree. I'll second the motion, but I just wanted to make a comment that it looks like, our inspectors are spending a lot of their time in investigating these unlicensed activity complaints that we've got, going 2 and 3 times to connect with these folks. I don't know if we're the ones to do it, but I'd like to see our unlicensed activity fees, those fines, go up. We're spending a lot of time and money tracking these folks down who aren't licensed by our board we're spending almost more of our time trying to figure out people who aren't licensed by our board.
I would state that we are statutory capped at $1,000 per occurrence, and we are assessing the statutory max at 1,000. So just to add that part to it.
Mike, what does that mean for statutory? Is that a state law? What is that?
Roxana, back me up on that. I think that is a statute. It may be a
It's in our rules.
promulgated.
Yes, you are correct, Mike. Our rules set that minimum as well as the maximum, but I believe that maximum is $1,000 per occurrence per day. So go ahead, Joe.
And that figure comes from a reg board statute, a statute overarching all of reg boards that states that any board or commission attached to the division can assess a civil penalty up to $1,000 per statutory or rule violation. And a lot of our programs have incorporated that into rule, but that it's essentially a monetary limit that we can't exceed for a single act violating our rules and laws. So essentially we'd be capped at the $1,000 figure per instance or per day, depending on how the facts shake out in the investigation. So Mike is correct on that. And it's incorporated in rule, but it comes from an overarching reg board statute.
Now, from an evidence standpoint, as much as I would like to charge them $1,000 per day, I would have to have evidence that backs that up, which basically means I would have to send the inspector in there every single day to be able to testify in theory, every single day that they were still violating that statute. I think it's going to be a hard sell to a judge to presume that that statute's being violated on separate days.
Right. Is there data for other boards that Roxanne, I know you have this insight, but is there data around unlicensed activity for other regulatory boards to compare sort of what we're seeing?
That's a great question, Amy. And of course, you all know what we do under Barber and Cosmetology impacts the whole state, right? We're throughout the entire state, over 12,000 shops, businesses, home shops, that kind of thing. So we definitely see the highest volume of unlicensed, I can say that. Keep in mind what the board has decided to do with the repeat unlicensed activity, which is if it is that unlicensed individual, unlicensed two individuals, it's 1,000 per person. The second time that there's that repeat violation, we are still hitting the civil penalty. But by the third time, this is a business model, is what I know the members, several have said. This is just part of doing business, and we've gone for revocation of the license. So we've not allowed that shop to continue that pattern the third time. Unfortunately, you are right, Ms. Tanksley. It is our inspectors going often. Those are the shops, to Ms. Lori's point, that we flag to go back to sooner rather than later, right? And we're all about protecting the public. That's the reason we're here and you all are here. So sanitation is a big concern, but the unlicensed activity is pretty big in the industry. And it's not just here in Tennessee. It is the industry, unfortunately. So we will go often. If it's an expired license, the penalty is small comparatively. You renew your license. Most of the time when we're there, unlicensed is viewed seriously, and we're going to go back. And then the board members have made that decision. If you continue with unlicensed activity, we're going for revocation. We could change that, but that's right now our path. It doesn't help the inspectors because you are right; they go out often. But that's at least right now how we're moving the volume of unlicensed activity. Does that help, Ms. Tanksley?
So after 3 times, then the
No.
license are revoked? No.
On the third. So
On
if
the
you
third.
have unlicensed activity, let's say 2 individuals, and then we go back within the next 6 months, let's say, and you have 3 unlicensed activities, that civil penalty they would take care of and still not going for revocation. But that third violation is where we go directly to a recommendation that you all have approved for revocation. We had a shop, I believe, and Mike can correct me, 2 meetings ago that had very high numbers. And that's what the board members pointed out. This wasn't just 1 or 2 people. It was high numbers. And that's when you as board members decided this is a lot of people unlicensed. And on that second visit, when there were multiple numbers, we went with a revocation. So you
Roxanne,
still always.
thank you for bringing that up because that was going to be the point I made. I know Ms. Tanksley several meetings back had brought up that concern. And so we're, I know the third, we're looking at 3 times as kind of a model, but we're also working off of that if we're starting to see a pattern or so in that second instance. So that sometimes we don't wait till that third opportunity.
I was just concerned that there wasn't a limit at all. So 3 is, I understand now.
Thank you, Roxana, for bringing that up.
Absolutely.
I mean, for the record, I appreciate everything that everyone is doing to track this down. It's just out of frustration and concern.
And Amy, just so I give you the citation, and I'm good legal counsel, the statute that I referenced for reg boards setting the limit at $1,000 is TCA, and that's 56-1-308, just for your information.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We have a motion to accept the legal report with an amendment to number 59, I believe. We've had multiple questions for the cases. If there are no other questions or debates, we do have a motion to accept as amended by Mr. Jeffrey Moran and a second by Ms. Amy Tanksley. So seeing no hands raised, I will do roll call vote to accept the legal report with amendments. Ms. Bernetta Carlton,
Yes.
Monica Lemons, Mr. Marquise Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Jeffrey Moran,
Yes.
Ms. Lane Petty,
Yes.
Ms. Becky Russell,
Yes.
Ms. Amy Tanksley,
Yes.
Ms. Lori Turner,
Yes.
and Ms. Tamika Turner.
Yes.
Thank you, members. And Mike, thank you. Great job. We had 87 cases that were presented. I will now turn it over to our legal counsel, Joe Warden, to go over legislative items. As you all know, the legislative session started in January. As bills are presented that touch the industry, Joe is fantastic at looking at those. He'll update us, but just that quick reminder that we do every year, make sure that you look at what's being proposed out there in your individual capacity, take a look at everything, but he will keep us up to date on anything that is presented. And as of probably Friday, these things always move. Joe, it's all yours.
Good morning, board members. And just as a resource for you all to review the legislation when it's proposed during session, I want to go ahead and provide you with the state legislature's website. It's very easy to use. They update it constantly. The website is www.capitalcapitol.tn.gov/legislation/ and you'll be able to pull up any bill there touching any bit of the state government. A bill that's specifically been put on the legislature's floor that addresses barber and cosmetology is Senate Bill 1800, and then the House bill number is 2056. As that bill is currently written, it would require the board to develop, maintain, and record identification numbers for all barbering and cosmetology students, instructor trainees, and then also use the identification number and the recording of CE classes for licensed instructors. The aim of the bill appears to be to protect Social Security numbers of students and individuals in our schools and instructors obtaining CE. Obviously, that is a noble aim. The board holds this responsibility underneath the bill. Currently, the department is working with the legislature or with the bill sponsor on the legislation to see if maybe it could be altered in a more beneficial way. But that's where we currently stand. It may be pragmatic to look at having schools address this since they're, touching the enrollment of students. But as of now, the bill places that responsibility on the board. I'm willing to take any questions that you have on that. Easy enough. We'll move on. That's the only piece of legislation that's currently on the floor that affects our board.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, we are back on our presentation on the iPads. I'll do the easy part first, our budget. This is our financial information through November 2025. It shows a deficit of 29,977. Not a big deficit, but nevertheless, it is a deficit through November. It leaves our reserve balance at 1,099,932. I will continue to update us on that number. There is no plans for anything regarding the specific budget and fees here. So because this is our first meeting, members, we have 2 orders of business that have to be done on the first meeting. The first one is vote to approve following our meetings using Robert's Rules of Order. For those members that are new, your training would have covered this, just like our previous members. And Ms. Arnold, I do see you with us. Welcome to the meeting. I'm so glad you were able to join us. I'm making a note real quick. Regarding Robert's Rules of Order, if you do have any question, Joe's our expert. He would fill us in. This is the reason we do a motion, a second. That's the reason today I'm doing roll call vote. It's all following those orders in order for our meetings to be very transparent and follow what they need to do. Are there any questions before we motion and second that we will adopt Robert's Rules of Order? No questions. I would entertain a motion to accept and a second.
Make a motion to accept.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Jeffrey Moran and a second by Monica Lemons, and this is to follow and adopt Robert's Rules of Order by roll call vote. Ms. Susan Arnold?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Bernetta Carlton?
Yes.
Ms. Monica Lemons?
Yes.
Mr. Marquise Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Jeffrey Moran?
Yes.
Ms. Lane Petty?
Yes.
Ms. Becky Russell?
Yes.
Ms. Amy Tanksley?
Yes.
Ms. Lori Turner?
Yes.
And Ms. Tamika Turner?
Yes.
Thank you, members. Next order of business before I turn our proposed rules over to Joe. This is the election of chair and vice chair. This is pursuant to TCA 62-4-105 that says the board shall annually elect a chair and vice chair. So this is that portion of our meeting. Currently, our chair is Ms. Becky Russell. Our vice chair is Ms. Amy Tanksley. I would entertain a motion. We can do them together. It is a motion by someone on the board for chair and vice chair, or you can address chair first, and I'll have to do roll call vote, however the motion is presented. So I will turn it over to the board.
A motion to keep chair and vice chair as is.
I second.
You all are fast. Okay, we have a motion by Lane Petty and a second by Marquise Martin to continue with our chair, Ms. Becky Russell, and our vice chair, Ms. Amy Tanksley. Ms. Tanksley and Ms. Russell, I will make sure that you're still both interested before I proceed with roll call vote. Amy's smiling. So.
Well, I'm doing whatever Becky's doing. So my question would be, Roxana, and we can take this offline, is when I know I'm getting very close to the end of my tenure here on the board. So I just want to make sure that that wouldn't be a conflict.
That's a great point. I don't have your date in front of me, but you would be able to stay, obviously, as long as you're on the board. And then that keep in mind that your term could expire, but if the governor doesn't appoint someone to replace you, you can continue on the board until that replacement is found. So we can go over that date, Ms. Tanksley, but if you're okay. And Ms. Russell, you unmuted yourself. Is that a motion that you would be comfortable with?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, so we have a motion by Lane Petty and a second by Mr. Marquise Martin to remain with our wonderful chair and vice chairs, Ms. Becky Russell and Ms. Amy Taxley, by roll call vote to proceed with this recommendation. Ms. Susan Arnold? Ms. Arnold?
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you. Ms. Bernetta Carlton?
Yes.
Ms. Monica Lemons?
Yes.
Mr. Marquise Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Jeffrey Moran?
Yes.
Ms. Lane Petty?
Yes.
Ms. Becky Russell?
Abstain.
Ms. Amy Tanksley?
Yes.
Ms. Lori Turner?
Yes.
And Ms. Tamika Turner.
Yes.
Thank you, members. Thank you very much. We are going to move on to the proposed rules as Joe worked very hard. He's done research. We've been talking about these, I believe, since October, if not before then. So I will let Joe walk us through this. These documents were emailed, so I know you all have them to discuss our next path. Joe, I will stop there and turn it over to you, sir.
Good morning, board members. As Roxana mentioned, we provided you copies of the proposed rules that I have regarding distance learning and education modules. The board has approved virtual learning, essentially defined as distance learning, where the teacher and the students are not physically present at the same location. Before with schools, with that being synchronous, where the virtual classroom setting, the teacher and the students are both participating live. The rules as drafted would extend distance learning with approved review by the board to asynchronous programs, which you see defined in the rules. That essentially is the module where a lesson has been recorded, or it's an interactive program through which the student participates with the recording, or with a computer program asking it questions, but essentially there is no professor actively physically present virtually with the students with an asynchronous program. The rules as drafted provide definitions to key terms. As you'll see, a lot of the definitions that we adopted were definitions that are currently being used by NACIS. It's very thorough. Alabama uses NACIS for their distance learning rules. And we discussed that during our last meeting, that they had essentially established a good foundation. Obviously, we are our own program. We are our own state. We are not bound to use NACIS. I just figured it would be a very strong starting point as far as definitions and overall structure go. I will answer any questions that you all have, make any revisions. The floor is completely open to you all. Thank you.
Joe, what would be the limitations, or are there any limitations for the amount of time that can be done digitally, either synchronous or asynchronous?
Great question, Madam Chair, and I apologize, should have touched on that. As I have the rules currently drafted, not drifted, excuse me. As the rules are currently drafted, we are limiting the distance learning regardless of whether it is synchronous or asynchronous to the theory portion of the curriculums only. I do believe it benefits the board from a strategy standpoint that obviously you all do a very intensive review of these school applications when you receive them. I do believe strategically it is better for us to leave some things open-ended. We don't want to recommend like a certain program that people have to use. Companies change names, companies close, programs are bought by another company. Maybe they don't keep up with their software. So as far as lack of specificity on certain programs and like modules, we left that open for the board. But as currently written, we're only considering the distance education, or as I have the rules drafted right now, it's only theory. So obviously practical would be problematic doing it virtually, at least in my opinion. So as of now, we just have it to instruction of rules, laws, exams, and any other theory portions.
So as written, doing theory only, in our rules, it states that cosmetology, for example, 10% must be theory related. Is there a maximum amount of theory related that they could do?
Are you asking if there's a specific portion of the curriculum that is required to be practical as opposed to theory?
Yes. So in other words, the way that is written now, could I teach 1,499 hours in theory and 1 hour in practical?
No. So my understanding is our current curriculums have a physical and then the chemical specificity areas, and that those areas wouldn't be able to be instructed underneath the theory umbrella of the curriculum. Now, if I need to change the wording or specificity or the diameter of the language, I certainly can. Just figured that, kind of based off the apprenticeship model, because it's really the best model that we have that kind of represents non-physical education or non-present education with our apprentice schools. We have them develop theory, and then after their students pass the theory portion of the curriculum, they go out and learn with hands-on training underneath a supervised licensed professional. Our specific curriculums don't break down specifically between theory and quote unquote practical, as you're citing, Ms. Russell. But the framing of these rules kind of mirrored the apprenticeship dynamic that we have, because I think it's a much more parallel thought process. But again, that's just kind of the idea going into it.
Okay, one more question. That would mean that general hours might be able to be taught digitally versus physical and chemical hours must be taught hands-on or at a school.
So, and this is Roxana. In part, yes, but as you know, we have 3 educators or school owners on the call. Here's my question. In regards to some of the chapters, they probably, and those are theory chapters, touch on chemicals or right? How you mix to do a perm, to do a color. There are portions in the general or in the physical and general physical and chemical hours that are covered in the book. So in reality, there's more theory, also some theory in those 3 chunks, if that makes sense. So you all can change the way this is broken down, but as Joe and I debated it, that was one of our questions. How are you going to want the synchronous and or asynchronous hours to be covered if we all, and you all, I think, have given us that information, that the practical hours do require an instructor to watch to make sure that you're not setting up bad habits when you're shaving, cutting, doing nails, all those things. So most of the chemical and physical probably would be practical, but at least from my understanding of your chapters, they do have some theory in the chapters for those. So Becky, I don't know if that kind of helps you identify it. And then again, think of apprenticeship, right? Apprenticeship is already 50% theory. So students are covering the entire book before they head over to that supervising professional. So again, for apprenticeship, we didn't redo the breakdown between general and physical and chemical. The board thinks this is a good time to change that. That would be a different path. But that's the reason I think that we stayed on that track. Does that help, Becky?
It does. I do think, though, I would be more comfortable with defining the amount of distance education that would be allowable. I think because we currently allow 50% to be done in apprenticeship via distance education, I feel like we should have no more allowable than 50%, regardless of if they were going the apprenticeship route or the cosmetology route. I feel like that if we do not define that amount, that there will be schools that take it to an extreme, meaning that they will do 1,499 hours in a distance education versus in person.
Madam Chair, would you like me to quantify exactly what you're saying in rule would it be preferable to the board if I go through each of the individual curriculums for each license type as currently listed, and then put the specific numerical value like of the total hours, and basically state numerically you're literally capped at 50% of like 1,500 hours. So for the 1,500 hour license, you would literally be capped underneath that specific license type to 750 hours of distance education, and do that for each license. Would that alleviate your concern there, or am I missing it? I just want to make sure that we're on the same page, and I want to address it exactly how you believe is best.
So the way that I feel that it could be done is either that or 50% of the required hours per curriculum. It doesn't matter to me if you break them down individually, as long as it's no more than 50% of the hours in any curriculum being taught as distance. However you feel like legally and it looks best in the rules, if that needs to be defined individually.
Okay. I think,
And
I mean,
to clarify, when we're saying distance, we are not being specific within that. So Becky, I agree with you. I like having a very clear sort of up to 50% or whatever that would be worded. But we're saying if it's distance, it's synchronous or asynchronous. There won't be a difference. It could be either or.
Yes. Now you will be aware of it when you review the school's application, right? This isn't just a mystery box now. This would be details that you all would review and approve just like any other school. So essentially, if a school proposes an asynchronous curriculum, it will come before you all. You will be aware of their programs, their measuring, their metrics, exactly how they're doing it. And then it's subject to your all's approval or disapproval as part of the school application. The lack of specificity, as I mentioned earlier, gives our school owners flexibility to figure out the best programs for them. And then also, like I said, if like Milady is a program that's been brought up on numerous occasions. It's a fantastic program. The company may last forever, but putting something like, hey, you need to use this program in our rules if Milady, for whatever reason, no longer exists in the future, or, God forbid, their business becomes weaker, or there's an issue with the software that they have in the future, we wouldn't want to be limited to them, and we'd want our business owners to have as much flexibility to choose the best program, most affordable program that they believe will serve their customers. So that's why we didn't recommend or put forth like specificity into a program as needed. It will come before you all. You all can use your experience and expertise. And, many of you are operating in schools. You're going to know the programs that work and the pitfalls of each. And then we can discuss on the record with the approval or denial of a school.
I got a question. So when I read this, when it says for theory portion, so out of a 1,500 hour curriculum for a cosmetologist, you got 300 general, 600 chemical, and then 600 physical. So that's telling me basically the physical portion can't be done. Only the remainder of the course, the chemical, and then like you said, Miss Roxana, only a portion of that can be done theory, because you got practical to go along with all of your chemical and your general, most of that stuff. So I'm assuming that when I read that, then knowing that the 600 is off limits, only the remainder of the course can be done asynchronous or synchronous or whatnot, right? And so is that what we were going for?
Yeah, yes, exactly. So I think that Miss Russell brought up your exact point too. She, hit the nail on the head. Apprenticeship, I based our current distance learning rules off of the board's operation as far as apprenticeship goes. There is vagueness. Apprenticeship rules state that a school can develop a curriculum whereby a student obtains 50% of their education in theory in the class, they take the test, and then they gain their practical experience underneath a supervised licensed professional. Our specific curriculums per license type do not define theory versus physical. It's those headings, which you nailed on right there. when we discussed the rules, Roxana and I, during the drafting, I brought up the idea of, hey, should I go through each one of these specific curriculum areas and state like, hey, this amount can be taught via distance or virtual learning, and this cannot. And the idea was, hey, we could do it that way, but we already have this model in place as far as apprenticeship goes, where schools are already doing this essentially for the supervising licensed professional. We could just set up these rules to mirror that. But there is vagueness because, like I said, the specific curriculums do not define theory versus practical. And then the apprenticeship rules just basically say you are responsible to develop a 50% curriculum under one heading of theory, and then the practical to be obtained underneath a licensed professional. So I do think it's a great point that you and the chair have raised, that instead of saying theory, which technically is undefined and kind of latches on to the apprenticeship dynamic, that we go ahead and state specifically that it would be limited to 50%. And then the character of both apprenticeship and distance are really the same, even though we've defined it more specifically underneath the distance learning education rules.
But even still, though, it's not really 50-50, though. It's not a 50-50 scenario. If you're looking at hour-wise, it's not a 50. It doesn't work out evenly. You got 9 and 6, you know? So even with the whole apprenticeship situation, that never really made sense to me because it's not 50-50. It's not 50-50. You know what I'm saying? I mean, in terms of the general, the chemical, and the physical. So I don't know. It's just kind of sort of confusing. I mean, I just assumed when I read that okay, this is just going to be just limited to just the quote unquote theory coursework, and not bother that remainder of that physical 600 hours can't be touched at all. You figure out how you want to do your general, your chemical, and your physical. I mean, your general and your chemical. Excuse me. But I don't know. That was just a question. That wasn't necessarily. I don't.
If
But
I
yeah.
could jump in here, the reason that I'm proposing the 50-50 split is because of what we do with apprentice. They do get their 50% in theory. But if you think about the chemical section, I'm going to pull out hair color just as a example. There are things that you do in theory prior to putting your students with a mannequin or with a client to perform those tasks, such as color law. So we go over the color wheel. That would be a theory lesson that goes with that. But technically, the way our curriculum is broken down, that's in the chemical area, although it is a theory thing, if that makes any sense. So there
Yes.
are theory portions to even the general, to the physical and the chemical areas. There are theory lessons that go along with that. Now, I will tell you from a TBR standpoint, who governs all of the TCATs, we get together and go over our theory versus hands-on, and we try to align those across the state. And the TCATs are doing somewhere between 35 and 45% theory lessons, and the rest of it being hands-on. And it varies a little bit by location, but it's somewhere between the 35 and 45 line of theory. That's just kind of to give you all an idea of what TCATs do.
I kind of think of it like this. So like if I get a student that wants to transfer out of the program, and let's say they haven't covered every topic within that chemical section, right? And so I'd say you got permanent wave, hair relaxer, hair coloring, bleaching and toning, sculpting, hair and nails, and blase. So it's roughly 9. I'm just going to throw 9 out there. So I'll say 600 hours total in that chemical section. I'll divide it by 9, and that gives me the number of hours that they've taken for each particular topic within that section. And so it's not clearly defined as how many hours that you're supposed to spend on permanent wave and hair relaxer and hair coloring specifically. So it's kind of hard to define like that 50-50 split. To me, it is. Mathematically, it just doesn't make sense to me. Not to say that it's right or wrong or indifferent, but it just never really just made sense. How can we just say that it's 50-50 when it's not clearly defined?
And I
There's no
think,
way of saying that it's a 50-50 split, but if we also look in our rules, we require as little as 10% in theory.
correct.
It says a minimum of 10%. It never put a maximum on that. So I don't know how we would clearly define it, but at some point when we were talking about apprenticeship, the split is 50-50, and that first 50% is in theory only. So apparently it's being done. I'm not saying that it should or it should be different, or I'm not saying anything about that. I'm just saying that it is being done at 50% theory for apprenticeship.
Yeah, and even that 10% piece, that's not even a thing in the barbering rules.
Correct. It's not.
That's
in
not
there.
even a thing.
Correct.
So, and I don't even understand how that doesn't align.
Right.
You know.
If I could add, and then I'm going to make sure that Joe corrects me if I'm wrong. So, of course, the law that passed apprenticeship split it 50-50. That wasn't a debate. We didn't add more to it or take away from it in the rule. So that was exactly how it passed. And we carried it out in the rule by guaranteeing that the theory exam could be passed before you send the student to a supervising professional, right? So that 50%, at least when the board members and myself and attorneys talked about in 2015, 2014, it took over a year and a half to pass those rules. It was that were some of the statements. The book, back to Ms. Russell's point, touches on the chemical and the physical hours throughout the book. So if you finish the book in that 50%, you're being tested. Remember, those of you that have put students through PSI, you're being tested on the whole book, all the theory. So maybe it is 50-50, even though it isn't that easy to see. You're finishing the entire book. I would just caution us, if we're going to make it different than apprenticeship, that will possibly, not necessarily, because Ms. Russell just gave us a great situation. We have amazing TCAT schools that teach, and they're kind of aligned, but not perfectly, and they've come into that perfect percentage within theirs to follow. But if apprenticeship is very different from what we're defining, synchronous and asynchronous and hybrid, and we're setting a different percentage, that's going to be interesting, because apprenticeship can be offered by any school, right? A school may. So they don't have to necessarily come before you to add apprenticeship. And we've seen even in today's presentations, hybrid being used for apprenticeship. So they're already using some of these hours and some of this flexibility. That would be the only reason I would encourage us to stay, similar. We are seeing more and more schools offer apprenticeship, and it may be fantastic. We've opened the avenue thanks to you all bringing it up. We had a couple of school owners that stayed on track until we did it. So our rules as of December 24th include the flexibility of a supervising professional to take up to 3 individuals. As more schools offer apprenticeship, you all have even asked, right? Give us at least the name of 1 or 2 professionals that'll take your students. It is becoming more difficult. I've got a school that probably at the next meeting, you'll see different complaints from students, because they're now doing their practical hours virtually, and the students are not happy with it, right? They are very concerned. They're recording their mannequins, and those are their practical hours. So if we, just for you all to think about, because you're the experts, if we don't define the hybrid piece as theory, we may have more schools that do some of those practicals, just record your mannequin, just something to think about. Joe?
I am completely open to suggestion. Like I said, I wanted to have rules drafted for us as a starting point. So please don't feel like, this is something that I'm asking you to approve or deny. You're as much of an author on these rules as me. I just know this is an important topic that we've discussed on our last couple of board meetings, and I just want to make sure that we move forward in the most logical and appropriate fashion for our students and our school operators, and make sure that the industry stays at the high level that it is. If we do deviate from, and I agree, the vagueness issue created with the word theory and practical in comparison to our defined curriculums for each license type is not ideal, but it is already currently in place with apprenticeship. So my emphasis to you would be, if we're going to change the way that we are looking at it with these proposed rules, we need to be mindful of both the consequences that it would take place on schools that do not have apprenticeship, and then also the apprenticeship model, because our pushback most likely will be from, people saying, well, hey, theory and physical, although not by word, but by practice, have been defined by your apprenticeship model that's in statute and rules already.
I think I feel comfortable with the 50-50 because it matches up with the apprentice program. I will say, in application, my experience of visiting schools, both full-time schools and apprentice schools, is that what is being presented to us on an application and what is being done in the field are two very different things in terms of what people are teaching, how they're teaching it, and what methods they're using, whether it's virtual or in person. I think I'd love to know, if the goal of these programs, of the goal of these schools, right, is to get students educated in the practice of cosmetology or barbering or aesthetics, etc., and be licensed to pass both of our tests, and become licensed with the state of Tennessee. How easy is it for us to get that data in terms of licensure by school and to publish that information, or to make it something that the schools are promoting? Because I think, my concern here overall is this is going to be a very interesting opportunity for businesses to offer this to students. Students in our field are not always making, educated decisions when they're choosing which school to go to. And I would hate to see more of our students wind up at schools, to your point, who aren't really getting the education that they're paying for, and they're unable to pass their tests.
And I think ultimately with the asynchronous and synchronous, and I think this is what Ms. Russell was fighting against the whole time, was that, just like Amy said, one thing is what's on the application, another thing is what's going on in the schools. And I think those of us that operate in the schools on a daily basis know the risk of this, so yeah.
So now
Roxanne, are those licensure, is that data available to schools or school owners, or are they capturing it themselves?
That is a wonderful question. So our schools that are accredited have to turn that data in, right? We do have PSI reports. PSI reports can tell us who's passed of their students, because they upload the students, how many times they had to take it before passing. I do get that data. I can pull it, I can review it. Nothing in our laws or rules say we would revoke a school for poor passing scores, right? So it's nothing because sometimes it keeps me up at night. So I don't dive in and go looking for it. But yes, so the PSI piece we can. I don't have a report already that says how many of these licensed individuals went to Mr. Martin's, school at Beta University. I don't have that. It's not to say we can't pull it. We've never pulled it. But the student tells us what school they went to. Unfortunately, it's free text. And so for that matter, they might abbreviate the name of his school, right? So I can't guarantee you that it would be great data. We could change that and force it, not anytime real soon, but force our technology to have a pull down of all the licensed schools, right? Just keeping in mind, a lot of our people that move here are coming from other countries. They're coming from other states. And so their data would be mixed in there. So it does limit a good report that would tell us what school did you come from. The other piece to keep in mind is many of our students transfer. So they're not just in one school, right? So they started at one of the schools, or maybe a high school, moved to a TCAT school, ended up finishing in a private school. That is, I see that oftentimes when I approve something. So then what? What data do we want to look at? And then as you really look at this language to guide Joe, and I will, of course, work with him on what is the best language and what do we use. Keep in mind your transfer students. For those 3 of you that own schools, accept transfer students. When you accept that transfer student, are you thinking about how many hours are theory versus practical? Are you just looking at the number of hours, right? I'm not saying what you're doing, but I do hear more often than not from the student that calls me, I'm close to my 750 hours in aesthetics, but that's because they've transferred in 250 or 300, but they still don't have that paperwork. It's confusing to me because then how does a school start somebody on 256 hours or 357 hours and not know what they're accepting? But that is in reality what happens sometimes. I'm not saying all the time. So it's just something to think about your transfer students. How do you accept them? It's not just theory and practical. So this 50-50 and trying to separate theory and practical might make it simple over, even though it's not perfect, but maybe it will.
The next part of this that I want to talk about, maybe we can have a discussion about, is synchronous versus asynchronous. While synchronous, I used the synchronous method to teach classes during the shutdown of 2020. And currently our students today, because there's ice on the roads here in Knoxville, our students are at home participating in a synchronous class. So one of the things that concerns me is that with synchronous, I know that the students are there actively involved. I can ask them questions live. They can ask me questions, more importantly, if they have questions about the lesson that I'm presenting. If we leave it as is, asynchronous education means that there is not a live instructor, that they would be logged on, completing work, just given, say, textbook information. It could be videos, it may not be, but they could just be reading a textbook and answering questions or whatever the case might be in an asynchronous manner. I'm not certain that we're going to be able to be sure that the person that was taking an asynchronous class is the actual person that was enrolled. So that may mess with how many hours they actually got. It also opens the ability for schools to have chat bots that answer questions that students pose. So if they did have a question, it would be much easier for a chat bot to answer, which means that they're not getting education from a licensed professional. So asynchronous education is still one of those things that is a real rub with me. I think that I would be more comfortable in assigning a percentage of the education that could be taught asynchronously, possibly for things like a shutdown or snow days whatsoever. And I would be more comfortable in saying 50% in total distance education with no more than 10% taught asynchronously. That would be my proposal. I'm open to discussion and suggestions, and that may not even be something that's possible that we can do. I just really worry about asynchronous education.
I like that. So I'm looking at it right now, right? The breakdown, right? And so maybe just have it to where only the general portion, not even any of the chemical, can be taught asynchronous. Only just the general. So that's just specifically just book work can be taught asynchronous and not any of the chemical or the physical. But a specific portion. I definitely like that idea.
I like that about it being the general hours asynchronously.
Well, I just want to chime in with being devil's advocate, because when I was researching online hair education, I literally pulled up videos of a woman reading a textbook as part of their synchronous education. And I thought to myself, if I'm a student and I'm logging into a Zoom and it's synchronous, what education am I getting by listening to a licensed instructor literally read the textbook aloud? And I don't think that's valuable education, synchronous or asynchronous, but I think, and I have seen, and I think you guys have too, asynchronous education that for, learning a language, gamification on an app. I mean, there's so much cool stuff out there for asynchronous education that I don't think that, I don't believe that asynchronous versus synchronous is better or worse, because I have seen some really, really bad synchronous education.
Well, and
Just
to speak to your point, sadly that happens in schools. We know the same thing. We've seen students who are going to schools and they have an instructor who's doing the same thing. So I think that's a very fair point.
And I would like to point out, and there's a lot of information in front of us, but if you look at the rules, let's go ahead and we can look at the barbering rule. The language is the definition. The definitions are the same for both barbering and cosmetology. But if we look at the proposed rule that I have in front of you, 5C, it states distance education, either synchronous or asynchronous, must be validated by substantive interaction on a regular interactive basis between students and instructors. So this applies to both. And then it says, defines substantive interaction for distance education activities requires engaging students in teaching, learning, and assessment and must include at least 2 of the following minimum: providing direct instruction, assessing or providing feedback on a student's distance education coursework, so grading, commentary, feedback, providing information or responding to questions, so the instructor being available in the same way for questions of the students, and then facilitating a group discussion regarding the content of distance education coursework. And I say that in full recognition that asynchronous and synchronous models do have their pitfalls, but I would say for fairness and consistency, it probably behooves us to consider the whole realm of distance education when we set up these rules, as opposed to, preferring one over the other. But that's just my recommendation. I fall to you all. You are the professionals in the field. I would say that there is a minimum criteria of engagement, though, still placed on even asynchronous courses with the way that I have the rules proposed currently.
And
So
I'm glad
as a
that you
board,
brought notice to that. I'm sorry, you can go ahead, Marquise.
so as a board, how do we monitor that?
Well, you would review their proposal at the application, approve them or deny, and then we would fall into the same realm that we do for any other behavior by our licensees, and we rely on complaints and feedback from students. If someone is doing something poorly, that we get a complaint, and then we'd reinvestigate it. But that's kind of the way that our board operates is, after we give you approval for initial licensure, we're going to assume that you're doing the right thing unless we hear otherwise. And then if we do hear otherwise, then we investigate. So it's more of a reactive regulation than anything. So it would fall under the same category. We would hope that you're doing what you've told us to do, but if your dynamic isn't working, then we would be relying on feedback and complaints to reopen that barrel.
Could we require those to be the asynchronous, those lessons to be submitted for review prior to those being allowed to be published out to their students?
This is Roxana. So we can ask for anything we want to review when we approve and review that license for consideration to approve them, right? But back to Joe's point, we have no way of knowing if they're really doing it that way once they are approved. And many of the complaints you all saw at this meeting, you've seen them in others, are those type of complaints. The student didn't get what they signed up to get, maybe, right? So I don't know that we can have the school continue. Now, as part of the application, we can ask them to present the way they intend to offer their coursework. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean, Lori, that they're going to do it that way, right? To Joe's point, that's the complaint process. When a student doesn't have the education they signed up for and what they saw and what they thought they were going to get, those are often the complaints you've seen. Those are the calls I had not too long ago from students really not getting what they signed up for and in tears because they're recording their practical hours, not having them in person as their contract had, which is a different issue because you can have your contract, obviously a civil matter with an attorney and what have you. But all that to say, once you approve them, we don't see day to day what they're really doing. The students would be the ones turning that over.
And so for the two things for me would be when they present and they want to do the synchronous or asynchronous, they present the, what they'll be using, like in December, the company that's doing the instructor training that's virtual, it's virtual, all virtual, no teacher. And I think we did approve it. I saw it on the website, but
Rocket
having
cert.
them,
Yes, ma'am.
yes. So having them present what they will be using so that we can see, or they can show us that the student can't skip forward, or the student can't skip lessons, things like that. And I know in the past we've done that back when Teachable and Blackboard and all those things first came out. We did have, and this was before I was on the board, but just watching the board meetings, they did have to present the platform that they will be using so that we could see that it did align with our regulations. And then also, as it pertains to like just knowing, like you said, knowing whether somebody's going to do the right thing or not. Even in the classrooms, like Amy said, some teachers are reading books word for word. Those teachers typically don't last long, but that interaction, like that human interaction, being able to, have that discussion, like, it was stated earlier, still having the discussions available, making sure that students, have things in place where we know whether the teacher or the school knows that they actually understood or were able to comprehend what was being taught, and not just having a video playing the whole time and the student never having human interaction. So I mean, I don't think that it's bad one way or another. It's an option. And like you said, we can't know what everyone is doing, but having that option and just like Rebecca said, putting in the like the maximum amount of time that they can do it, not having it where they can just put the whole class online, because some people will do that. And just, speaking for myself, like I run into students all the time in different arenas that are complaining about, these schools that we are approving. They're not getting it. I've never seen my teacher, they just put us online, and, so they're already doing some of these things. But just being able to have something in place where, as when we do get a complaint and the student says, well, I've never met my teacher. I've been online for 900 hours. And then, we say that they can only get, 20%, then we know that we have something to compare it against. Versus, again, just letting it, just saying, yes, they can do it, and then not having any parameters around it.
What about the penalty? What if someone says, okay, we're gonna teach this course asynchronous, and they fall short of the standard that we set, right? Could there be a stiffer penalty for those institutions that take on that? So, like you say, we're gonna do this, right? And we're telling you, okay, you can do it. But if you fall short of the standard, there are penalties, strict penalties in terms of educating students, right? There are stiff penalties. You can do it all you want to do it. But if you fall short of the standard now, be ready for the consequence.
It's a great question, Mr. Martin, and this board meeting has now come full circle. So yes, we would be able to assess civil penalties for any violation of rules, which these would be encapsulated in rule, and then per violation, we're capped at $1,000. So that question was brought up earlier as far as unlicensed activity goes, falls under the same dynamic. Now,
Right.
if the board wanted to be more specific with civil penalties based on these violations, you could state, like, theoretically, If a school is found to be in violation of the board's distance education policies, the minimum civil penalty to be assessed per violation is $1,000. You
Right.
can't go over 1,000, but you could essentially take away any leniency of getting a $100 fine, a $50 fine, or $250, and that is completely in the board's discretion. The one thing that isn't is going over $1,000 per violation. But yes, you could be specific like that and articulate a certain civil penalty based off of distance learning as opposed to the general range that would apply to other rules.
Right. It's just something, some safeguard, something, some accountability, really, honestly, because really, essentially, that's where we're at right now, right? We say you can do it, cool, you do it. If you don't do it, what's the penalty? Right now, there is really no penalty, right? Essentially.
Well, there is. The complaint process is in place. You all saw redacted complaints today. Some schools were there.
Mm-hmm.
I tell schools shortly after they open when they get their first complaint, every school gets complaints.
Right.
The other piece to think about is, and I think Amy said this very well, our students that come into the industry, and that may apply to every industry, right? Don't always know their options.
Mm-hmm.
I have never gone a week without hearing from a student in the state, at least one. No idea how to, didn't want to file a complaint, just wanted to talk to me about it. But then when those allegations come up that go against what we have jurisdiction to cite, the student still has to file that complaint, right? I can't file on their behalf. And sometimes that student, one, didn't know, got all the way to the end. And to Miss Tamika Turner's point, then when they finished, they said, I didn't ever meet the instructor. We all know we've not approved a single school to be online only and not meet the instructor. That doesn't exist.
Right.
And so we don't find out, or she finds out when they're finished. Sometimes I find out in between and explain the complaint process, but the student may choose to not open that complaint.
Yeah.
Just something to think about.
I have a
Well, I
question.
think this is a huge opportunity for businesses in the education space, right, to up their game and to be more competitive. I mean, I would be hopeful that this makes schools better for our students and that schools are doing a better job of advertising to students why students should go to their program over another for whatever reason that is. And I would be hopeful, as all of us are interacting with students, which we all do, who are not having a great experience at their school, that we are encouraging them to transfer to a better school or to look into which schools to go to rather than, the one closest to my house or the one that my friend is going to. And maybe more distance learning will be easier for folks to access better education simply because they don't have to go to something as close as possible to where they live.
I have a question. Does the board have the right to revoke a school's right to, like, can we revoke a school's right to use distance learning if we're getting complaints?
I think theoretically you could put that into rule. My question would be, what happens to a school that you approve that basically states, let's just say for hypothetical purposes, that they're going to we get a school that wants to set up an apprenticeship program. They get approved from us initially to provide distance learning for the theory portion of their exam or the 50% of their curriculum, which obviously they can only apply to theory because they don't do practical instruction. If we revoke, after approving the school, their ability to teach via distance education, and that was all the information that we received on their application because they originally set up their school to only supply distance learning methods and they were approved, we will then have in fact ended their business because how could they course correct and then supply teaching methods that are not virtual, that never came before this board on initial application. So that would just be one item that I bring up, and that it could be problematic if we set up a retroactive pull system like that. But I do understand exactly your point. Your point is, hey, if we have a bad actor, how can we stop them as quickly as possible and prevent more students going down this path of potential failure and not being able to place exams? I just think it creates other issues And we would almost need, if that's what we would want to entertain, you would almost need to require on initial application, as kind of we have the teach out method. Like if your school were to close doors and you basically have this alternative method of where your students are going to go, we would almost need to apply that to the curriculum in and of itself and say, hey, we're going to approve you for distance virtual learning at initial app, but hey, if you don't do it right and we pull your right to do that, we're going to need to see your setup to then teach all the students that you already have enrolled.
And for some students, there lies the problem. Like you have some schools, again, that are, I always speak on apprenticeship schools. The students are getting to the 50% mark. They've passed their exam, but they can't go into the salon portion. And so it's been stated that, well, if the school can't find them anywhere, they can't do an agreement to have the student just come back to the school, or if they can't find an apprentice partner, they have to start all over. If they can't find another school that does apprenticeship, they have to start all over. Well, schools, if you're going into a school, basically you have to start all over. And so the students are then stuck because what do? I've paid all of my money, I've taken my exam, and now I'm stuck in limbo.
I completely agree. I'm not saying anything just because you're right. I mean, that is an issue. And it's a terrible one. I just don't know if we have the tools at our disposal in statute and rule at this time to course correct when a student has already gone down the path with the school. There's a contract in place, and we unfortunately, we don't have a time machine. We can't go back and get that time back. And like you said, if there's no supervising professional available, they're at a dead end. I just, as sympathetic as I am, I just don't know how we could alleviate that concern.
Members, and that's something you all have asked, right? And I do when I start my conversations with the school applicants. Do you have enough supervising professionals in the area? And I've spoken to 2 or 3 schools that have said, oh, I have dozens. And I'm not saying that they don't have dozens, they may, but it's just something, you all being in the industry, would you want forever to take on a student? That's the question, right? Because you might be that supervising professional that's put one student through. Now the rules allow you up to 3 as long as they're not together at the same time, and you can devote time and attention to their needs. But is that now a part of what you're going to do forever? Are they going to keep sending students to you? I'm not saying that that's not what you want. I'm just looking at you all as professionals in the industry, and that's a lot to keep taking. So, and I would say easily 60% of our schools, if not more, are offering apprenticeship in some model. They might not only do apprenticeship and also have traditional, but they are offering apprenticeship. So those professionals out there that are taking students could get burned out or have. And it just can definitely be a situation that we hear more and more students running into the problem.
So I was reading through while we've all been talking, I was reading through the version that Joe created, and I totally appreciate your work, Joe. You've done a fantastic job. If we do not, let's say that we agree, and I'm not speaking for the board, I'm just saying that if we agreed that 50% of the education could be completed in a distant learning education model without saying how much is synchronous, how much is asynchronous, I'm going to tell you that from my point of view, that I could give a student online lab access to the platform that we use, assigning them asynchronous lessons for them to complete on their own for 750 hours. If we said that it was the theory portion equals 50%, I could give them asynchronous theory lessons for 750 hours. And under these, it says that I must include two of the following. I could do the assessing and providing feedback without even looking at anything, because the assessments, when they turn them in, it is graded and it tells what questions they missed. So that would automatically go out from our school saying, this is your test grade and the things that you've missed. So that's assessment and feedback. And then I could also provide information or responding to questions about the content of distance education coursework by leaving a little in the chat, just giving information like today's the due date for whatever, or if they have a question, to answer it. But not all students have questions. So I would still technically be following that if they ask no questions. So for 750 hours following this model, I could load somebody into our lab, our online lab, and kind of put it on autopilot for 750 hours without ever having interaction with them, and still be within what it says here.
That was nice. I like that a lot, Rebecca Russell.
I'm not saying that I would do that, because there's not a chance in this world that I would, but I don't want somebody else to do it strictly based on I can collect tuition and put them on autopilot for 750 hours. The other thing that I would have to say is that at least when we've got them in a apprenticeship model, they are taking that theory portion of the exam prior to going into their practical portion, which tells us that they either knew the theory information or they didn't prior to going into the theory. So in the model that I've just said, I could stick them in that online lab and let them do that 750 hours. Then they're going to come to me and may or may not know that information of the lessons that I've assigned. And now I'm just going to show them the practical side. And again, I would never do this, but I have to make sure that nobody else does this for safety to the public or safety to these students that could get involved with the school that would.
Yeah, I mean, I see, Becky, you're absolutely right. I mean, that is one of the things that could happen. I mean, it also, I'm thinking of all the education apps, right? I see that being an option in this space, right? Where I can take my hours from home, I can do it late at night, I can do it early in the morning, I can have all the flexibility in the world. If it's asynchronous, to get those hours, collect those hours whenever I want to. I do think, right, in our industry, the protection is the practical portion. That clearly this is a hands-on business, that has to be part of it. But I would be hopeful that as a student who's choosing a curriculum, if you are really looking at what's best for you, going into a program with no supervision, if you know that's not going to work for you, would be something you don't choose.
Possible suggestion. What if for asynchronous programs, we were to put in a requirement, and I'm looking at the exact area you are, Madam Chair, which is the things that we would require in order for there to be substantive interaction. Possible options would be, instead of requiring 2 of the 4, theoretically 3, because I'm guessing here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the concern here is we're not getting direct or live interaction between an instructor and students. I hate to say this, but when I went to college and I've taken classes as a student, I never sought out direct feedback on a personal level from all of my teachers. Sometimes I went to class, took the lesson, I took the tests, I took the quizzes, got my grade, and walked out the door. If our concern is there being like mandatory facilitation of direct live commentary back and forth outside of a lesson, because an asynchronous lesson is never going to have direct live interaction by definition, What if we put a requirement for any school that provides asynchronous courses that they must, as part of that asynchronous curriculum, schedule and establish a period separate from the course in which a live teacher is present to answer questions or feedback, and that would be separate from the lesson. Kind of still facilitates the same questions back and forth, but we define it more specifically and say, hey, this little piece, this commentary period or question period, you're going to have to be live for that. You don't have to be live for the teaching, essentially. That's just a possible option.
Well, I think by like enforcing an amount of synchronous versus asynchronous, it would take care of that altogether. Because if you had them do an asynchronous lesson and then there was a synchronous portion, which is what you're saying, there would be a synchronous portion to that. If we would just say no more than a certain percentage can be done asynchronously, that would then give them that interaction with their instructor synchronously. I don't know if in the way that I heard you saying it, like their feedback portion, it makes it sound like that wouldn't be part of their hours. Like it would just be a separate session that they would have to go to say, here's your feedback or whatever. But it absolutely could be part of their hours. One of the things about a synchronous thing is when giving feedback, I can say, hey, Amy, what would you get if we mixed red and yellow? And she would turn her mic on or type in the chat what happens. And now we're talking and I could give her feedback. That's excellent that you knew that. Or, actually the correct answer is blah, blah, blah. And that's feedback that they're getting in a synchronous method. So I think that there's going to have to be, it's either going to have to be all synchronous or a mix of synchronous and asynchronous. But I don't think that we should ever advise that it be 100%, the theory portion be 100% synchronous or be allowed.
So makes perfect sense. So my understanding is the heading that I need to direct this vehicle moving forward is that we limit the distance education piece and the asynchronous piece specifically to a certain percentage. So as of right now, we're basically saying that you can use distance learning methods for up to 50, that will be our new change, up to 50% of the curriculum. What portion of distance learning would we want to limit to asynchronous methods? I believe earlier it was 10%. Is that 10% of the total curriculum? Or is that 10% of our 50% that were approved for distance education?
So in my notes that I was making prior to this meeting, I said 10% of total. So for cosmetology, for instance, it would be no more than 150 hours in asynchronous. And then the remainder
use
of
synchronous for rest. Yeah. Okay.
And although this is kind of tackling a different thing, I think that we're going to have to update the transfer and withdrawal papers to notate what portion of that was given via distance education, because we also don't want a student moving from one distance education provider to another and then ending up completing a ton of distance education hours.
You put that in there, didn't you, Joe?
I currently, and Madam Chair, let me know if I need to revise it. Currently, letter D underneath both subheadings states that all transcripts or other documents listing academic attainment received must identify the distant education component. And then there's another one, E, that says prior to enrollment, students are provided with a disclaimer that academic achievement earned via distance education may not be accepted for reciprocity or eligible for licensure in other states. I could amend schools as well to that, and a signed and dated copy of the disclosure must be found in the student file.
I think that covers it. Thank you so much. My recommendation would be 10%. I would entertain other percentage amounts, but that's a discussion for the board, I suppose.
I don't know, percentage wise. So like, what can we do under that 10%? Is that's still kind of just left kind of open what you can and what you can't do with that 10%? I think, I don't know, some things just need to be a little more specific, right? And so if we say that you can only do the general theory portion, that makes it very specific. That's bacteriology, that's sanitation, that's haircutting, that's, you know what I'm saying? Like the theory portion of that stuff, right? That's saying specifically you can do this and that's it. If you say 10%, you know, that's 10%. Like it's not very specific. It leaves it kind of like way open, you know. That's just my opinion.
I don't want to add to your debate. I just want to, the only thing I think maybe Amy touched on is part of our conversation is to allow for some of this flexibility as well. So although we want to make it very specific, like we want to be a little bit careful that we've also not taken away the reason one of the reasons we're addressing this, which is for flexibility for the full-time parent that has to work all day and, you know, has limited access to the education, just something to think about. And I know once the board gives Joe the okay, we will open it up in case anyone is participating through WebEx or here in person that wants to add, but I want the board to be comfortable with whatever guidance we're giving Joe before we proceed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But, you know, if I'm teaching an asynchronous course, right? And so just like you said, Joe, like sometimes it didn't require you to have any interaction with the instructor so if I just want to put a tape on and play it, listen to it and take the test, right? That would be easy to do if I just said that you can do just the general portion. That's it. That's just these topics covered in the general portion, right? And then when it comes down to chemical, right? There's a lot of safety involved in dealing with chemicals. Ton of safety, probably more safety than anything else than we teach, right? There needs to be an instructor present, right? So you probably need to do it at a minimum synchronous, you know, for these particular portions. You know what I'm saying? And so that makes it more specific.
If we want to do it that way, then we would probably need to go back to what I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting as an option. And instead of using our classification of saying 50% of the curriculum, based off what I'm hearing you saying is we would actually want to go to each license type and say, hey, of these general hours, you can use X for distance education, X, Y, Z. And yeah, that would be more specific, and that would be a change from the way that I have set up. Completely up to you all. If that is the way that you think is best, I will go ahead and go through each license type and get those typed up based off of the parameters you've given me. It would just be different than how I currently have it, and I could go through each one. Just,
you know, and I'm a part of a bigger group, so I'm not, you know, I'm not trying to, but I'm just saying that it just mathematically when you start putting out 50% and 10%, it's just like, you know, it's just kind of leaving it kind of open. You know what I'm saying? What you can and what you can't do. And if I'm a school owner, which I am, I like it to be more specific. As a barber, when a client comes in, tell me what you want. Let me give it to you. Don't say just do what you think, and then you don't like it when I give it to you. You know, so it's just easier when it's very specific. You know, no one has to question. This is what it is. We're gonna do this, and as long as we follow within these guidelines, we're good. And you know, what is 10%? What is 50%? I don't know. What do you guys think? I don't know.
Would it make you more comfortable if we said that 50% can be delivered in distance education with a maximum of 10% taught asynchronously in the general, like in the general area? Does that make sense?
0 to me.
So if, let's say that we said you can teach 50% in a distance education model. So 750 hours could be taught in the distance education, but only 10% maximum can be taught asynchronously, but that asynchronous portion must also come from the general hours section.
I think it works. That might work, and if depending on the context that you're using asynchronous and synchronous, right? So if we're using it because of a snow day, right, is one thing. But if we're using this because this is the way that we want to teach the course, it's different. It's just different, you know? So if I'm using it in terms of just like, you know, a situation where we can't get to the school and we still want to have instruction, then okay, then I can't abuse the synchronous or the asynchronous situation because we're only supposed to be using it for this reason, right? But if I'm opening up a school and I want to use the asynchronous and synchronous methods to teach my course and give my students more flexibility and save me time and limit my staff and all these different things, then it just needs to be, I feel like it needs to be more specific to when I can and when I can, or what I can and what I can't teach using synchronous and asynchronous.
I
You
don't
know,
know.
'cause
I'm going to say this out loud, but I think we can rule this thing to death and have no idea what's actually happening in schools once they do it. That's my fear. We can put all these things in, and you and I both know schools that I'm going into aren't following the current rules we have. So I don't know how helpful this is.
One comment that I would have based off of your example, Mr. Martin, please let me know if I'm missing something. Because again, I'm just pure clarity.
Yes.
No critique at all.
Yes.
If we limit it in specificity to saying, hey, you can supply up to 50% of your curriculum via distance education methods. However, if a school wants to use asynchronous distance education methods, you are limited to teaching asynchronous lessons to 10% of the general hours. If a school has already hit that portion of their curriculum, a natural disaster happens, like you said in your example, snow, whatever it is, we wouldn't know for sure that every single business has supplied their individual instructors with the ability to teach virtually live from home. I think that's a safe assumption, but you could also see a circumstance where a school wants to keep their technology, like laptops, computers, and stuff that they give out to their employees, maybe locked up at the school to make sure that things don't go missing, things don't get broken, or anything like that. We could then run into a situation where if they've already hit their limit on asynchronous, or they've already taught that area of the curriculum, snow day happens, nothing could be taught because now they're not allowed to use recording videos that they could have maybe extended to other areas of the curriculum. And then because a teacher isn't able to go to the school to get their computer to live stream that lesson that was scheduled that day, we've hit a wall. You see what I'm saying, or does that not make sense? I know it's a lot of ifs.
No. It makes sense, but I mean, if that particular topic has already been covered, why are we covering it again? The only thing that's left is the hands-on, and we got to be in the building for hands-on.
Well, I'm saying like hands-on would be practical. So like we're saying, our initial realm is saying, hey, you can teach up to 750 hours via distance anyway. If they had originally planned to have an in-person practical day, but they have not capped theory hours, because my understanding from you all that really people are capping theory only in the apprenticeship aspect, like usually in the normal curriculum, you're probably getting some theory and practical every day.
Every day.
Right? Okay.
Every day.
So if we were to limit asynchronous education to that specificity, you could theoretically run into an issue where distance education becomes problematic when it could have been most useful, i.e. a natural disaster, because we've said, hey, that these asynchronous modules that you're limited to, they can't be applied here. So we're not, and you don't have the ability to live stream. So then how do you teach?
Yeah, so that shouldn't be taken away. That should still be an option during those times. I mean, that should be understood, and that's for like how we are today. This is not how we typically meet, but because of what's going on, we made the adjustment to be online due to the weather. So the school shouldn't be penalized for that, or we shouldn't set a parameter of when they can use it. If it's a circumstance like this, even though we say 10%, like even if they're just meeting and going over reviews or whatever they choose to do during that time, so that the students aren't penalized in their contract. They're not penalized, by missing a day, and then their potential graduation date or projected graduation date is now pushed out because of something that was out of their control. So I know one of the things that Ms. Roxana speaks on all the time is not penalizing the student. And so if not something like this happens, then they should still have the opportunity to log in online, although, it's outside of the 10% or whatever we approve, for the asynchronous learning.
I think too, I'm missing a piece too, though. So that you don't have to. So for me, I'm a school owner now, and so if I decide I want to use any of these methods, like once this goes into effect, I don't have to come back before the board and say, hey, I'm turning into synchronous, asynchronous. I can just rock and roll.
Yeah, we would expect that you tell us at the front end, hey, I admit to the rule that I'm going to teach X% via distance learning. I'm going to do it synchronous, asynchronous. Great. How are you going to do it asynchronous? These are the programs I'm going to use. These are the, catches in place to make sure. We were reviewing that at initial app, and you're going to have to be comfortable with it and give them the thumbs up and certification. There's no ongoing review process for even our main schools now. Like, we do that initial inspection, give you a thumbs up, and then if we don't hear complaints on you, there is no inspection. There is no extra criteria. So it would be the same thing. We would hope that they do in that initial app. There wouldn't be constant feedback of, hey, I've hit my asynchronous cap here. Now I'm only doing synchronous, because that would be a whole extra communication module and recording system that the board isn't even using for our main schools now.
Right. But no, what I'm saying is I'm already opened.
Right.
I'm already open. I'm open.
Correct.
I'm doing business. I've been doing business for 10 years. This comes into effect, right?
Oh, you're saying you
Yeah.
just adapt immediately from teaching in school to using these? No, I would say that we have to approve your distance learning education
Okay.
module before you can institute it. Because you're right, that would be completely unfair. Any new school would go
Right.
through a very tough critique and review process, where an
Right.
existing school could just rubber stamp something and move. I don't think that would be equitable.
Right.
And I agree with Joe's piece. We would have to but I want that, you all to think about that, right? We have close to 400 schools. The high schools follow the Department of Education. So we don't approve, opine. I work very closely with the high schools on how they divide their modules, but we don't bring them for you. TCAT schools come through the Board of Regents. We don't approve, deny, voice. It would be our private schools would all need to receive communication once this rolls out. And if they're choosing to offer this, and you can correct me, Joe, and their approval from the board, that might go back 10 years, or frankly, we have a few schools that have been open, since easily the early 90s, right? When we got our first computer system. So they're going to be coming before you if they choose to offer this. Now, they may not, but if they do, they'd have to follow. And the board would have to review that. And schools are inspected. They're inspected at least once a year, close to once a year. If we have a complaint, we'll go more often. And we look at those student files, but we don't stay in there for hours to determine how many students are in a synchronous model. Are these asynchronous? This is going to happen. Where are the 75 or 200 students that the school shows on their monthly hours reports, right? Because they've got all these options now, or could, and they happen to be a day that's all asynchronous. We wouldn't know, but at least we would have them come before us and make sure their new documents, that'd be a lot of work for us and the board, are aligned with the changes to the rules. Does that make sense, what you were kind of asking?
Yeah. I think we kind of got just like a little bit off of course, just a little bit with everything. I don't know. Like I said, I just feel like it needs to be a little more specific in terms of, what you can and what you can't do with it. I do feel the point of, when you open it up to 50%, you give yourself a little more wiggle room. But I think the whole reason why we're having this discussion is for that not to be taken advantage of. And I think that's kind of where it all started.
What if we looked at it from the other coin? Instead of saying things that you could teach asynchronously, because I believe there are things legitimately that the board is concerned about, what if we focused on things you cannot teach asynchronously. So instead of saying like, hey, 10% of your curriculum has to be asynchronous, which could be tough for us to evaluate because we're not looking at things after the fact. What if we said, hey, these specific items, these specific lessons cannot be delivered, and then the concern maybe from the board, unless I'm missing something, again, I'm not trying to summarize everyone's viewpoint in a single thing. From initial app, they've already given you the basic, I pledge I will never teach this asynchronously, and then we can hold them liable after the fact if a complaint is filed because they violated that specific provision. I just think it gets harder when we say you can teach this. I think sometimes it's easier to say you can't teach this on the front end.
I
If
like
that
that.
makes
I
sense.
mean, I think that's a good idea as well.
Can I go ahead? Sorry.
Mhm.
Can I say I like that as far as saying what we can't teach? Coming from having previously been a teacher before, I think that obviously that we don't monitor day-to-day operations with schools. And so I think it's going to be really, really hard for us to put percentages and to be able to monitor that. I think that at the end of the day, I have previously been 100% really against asynchronous learning. And I'm not so sure that I'm just 100% on board with it anymore, but we have people that are getting full-on doctorate degrees completely online. I think that we are going to have to adapt a little bit. I think that obviously the practical portion, I know that's already been said, is really that hands-on is what is so important that they are getting in person. I just don't know how we're going to monitor it. I think we can put whatever parameters we want in place, but if they're not following the rules now, what makes us think they're going to follow the rules with whatever rules that we put on this? Because I think schools right now are teaching asynchronously at times, and we don't know that.
Yeah, and just for, those that are listening, because even with doctorate degrees, you had to have, whatever training first or whatever you're licensed in first. There were clinicals and things that they had to do hands on. In our discipline, in the medical discipline, where they had to go in and do like hands on, or had to be present for some of the things and not just full on online. Like I said, I agree with synchronous and asynchronous. Again, we can't regulate, we can't know what they're actually doing when they leave. Like we said, if their paperwork is in line when they come to us, and if there's anything different outside of that and the student does file a complaint, then we jump in and we do our jobs.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think we have to protect the practical portion of it very, very carefully. And I think we have to figure out a way to make asynchronous available, whatever that looks like for the students.
Hey, Joe, so I guess you need a direction to go.
I was about to say, so we don't have to vote on this today, do we? Or can we continue the conversation? Or is this the day to get everything approved?
You are my client. You all are my client. This board is my client. I do as my client wishes. I will say, as guidance to my client, this has been a hot topic. There are very interested parties in this, as we've seen in the last couple of meetings. We're never going to operate as a board from a position of being intimidated or being scared, but I do believe that it behooves us when an issue pops up like this that does have importance from the field, that we try to address it as efficiently as possible. This would be our third board meeting where we've kind of kicked around hypotheticals. This is the most detailed for sure, because we actually had something to look at and discuss that I authored before. We can do anything that you all wish. I will do as you wish. My recommendation is it is best for us to start hitting the ground running as quickly as possible on this matter to prevent any negative outcomes or litigation that then the board would have to deal with on top of taking on this new project. And we certainly want to demonstrate goodwill or a motivation to solving these issues. So we can do as you wish. My recommendation is we craft what I've drafted. You tell me exactly what to do. I will then recraft. You still have a rulemaking hearing. This is not an official rulemaking hearing. This was such a big issue. I thought it inappropriate for me to draft rules, have legal approve them, bring them down here for public comment, and then for you guys to say, Joe, you missed the boat, man. This is way too wide, and then us to tear up a whole project. So we can do as you wish, but my recommendation would be tell me how you want me to alter the course. I will then work on it. We can then get them approved for legal, actually start having this process begin, and then you can input additional guidance and advice at that rulemaking hearing after I've gone in the direction you've shown me today. That would be my recommendation as to what is best.
Okay, and before we continue, Mr. Beck, I know you were saying 50% synchronous and the 10% asynchronous, which I'm satisfied with. And like you said, that's just an option, correct, for those who want to do it.
So I think that we should probably tackle this one thing at a time, and maybe this will help Joe to keep it clear. How many of you all are in favor of limiting the distance education to a maximum of 50%?
So and I was asking that because, with apprenticeship, Rebecca, Ms. Russell, I actually was just sitting here typing some notes because with apprenticeship, if you're doing the 50% of the theory online and then you're shipping out the students after they pass their exam to a salon, like we're really failing the students because they don't have any foundational hands-on training. And so, and I know that that's how we currently do it, but that's kind of, like I said, I'm drafting an email now to submit over, like, if we're putting them 100% online for their theory after they pass and then they go to a salon, we're saying we don't want the salons to be, no, I take that back, but we're sending them out to a salon. Like they don't have any foundational knowledge. Like we do a thing in the city called Partners in the City where we connect with the salons here. And I know that this is just, we do it in Memphis, and Jackson and some in Nashville as well. But like the salons, they're excited to take the students because they want to pour back into some of the students as well. But they are also saying, we get some of the students in here that don't know how to shampoo hair or don't know how to take off a rubber band. So like they have to like, really stop. And now they've become a school. And I get that that's part of, the partnership, but foundational things like, to me, shampooing is part of infection control. It's part of the sanitation piece physically on the actual client. And it goes beyond just sanitizing infection control on the tools and implements and the stations and things like that. So that's like where I'm kind of like, stuck at like the fork in the road for me. Saying yes, I'm okay, with the 50%. And then
Ms. Turner, I am
Yes,
so
ma'am.
sorry to interrupt, but just a quick note as you're all thinking about whether we're going to agree or vote on the 50% or not, keep in mind that the apprenticeship is in the law.
Yes.
And it's permissive. So we can't touch that law. That law is as is.
Mhm.
What you all did as board members is decide that the exam would protect the public, and that's where the exam comes in. And then you mentioned shampooing. Shampooing is not even regulated. So I
Right.
sometimes teasingly say I could shampoo.
Yeah,
Not
right.
to say that I would, and I wouldn't be any good at it. I'm not very patient, but I could because it's not regulated directly. So, and all of our apprenticeship only schools, they don't have sinks to shampoo. right?
Mhm.
They are just doing the theory, just something to think about. And that apprenticeship has been here since 2013 for cosmetology, 2015 for barbering, rules a
Mhm.
little bit after. So
Mhm.
but
I
I
get
agree with
it, and
Joe.
that's part of what I drafted in the
Yep.
email as well. But I get it. I get that part, and I will thank you for clarifying that, because that, even though we are apprenticeship, that was done before I became a board member. But the 50%, that's the law. You
Yes,
saying
ma'am.
that's the law, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Ever
Okay, so
since
what we'll be
2013 for
okay.
cosmetology, yeah, and
Okay.
15 for barbering. And I agree with Joe. I would love for him to take your next language. What do we want in these rules to move forward? If we can come up with that, we'll hear opinions from the public and then at least give him guidance. Don't you agree? To move forward.
And I do just want to be completely clear because I know we've discussed a lot of items. If we move forward with one of the items discussed today is saying, hey, you can teach up to 50% of your curriculum via distance education. Okay. Distance education then has two branches: synchronous, asynchronous. Okay. If we move forward with that dynamic, we're in a world, and I can tell you right away, because I've thought about it a ton, is you would have to be comfortable with a school applying to be apprenticeship and telling us, the board, hey, you've approved via rule that I can teach 50% via distance education. We are going to see applications where a school says, hey, I'm teaching the theory portion because you've approved 50% of the curriculum, all virtual. And then I'm going to send you to a shop, because that is 100% going to happen, because it's the least cost prohibitive business model that a school could have. Now they have to have the bare minimums or the bare minimum physical requirements. And then, they are able to use virtual from then on. I mean, if I'm just saying theoretically, if we state 50% via distance, that's going to happen. So I figure I better bring it up, because that would technically fall within our rule, right? Because they're teaching 50% of their curriculum, which is the theory portion only, and then sending out.
I think the other piece here, I'm more comfortable with the 10, but the other piece here is that we're concentrating more on the school. But me, as when I was going through as a student, um, I went through and I was like, look, I told my teacher from the beginning, I was like, look, man, I'm not here to play around. And I was like the last one to leave and the first one to be there. So just as much as we're wanting to put all of this pressure on schools, the student has to be invested. And I had been around students that they wouldn't invest it, and it was like pulling teeth to get them to do anything. And it comes down to we're just trying to come to a point to where we put these things in place, and if they're the ones that are having problems, they're not getting what they're getting, part of it is their own fault. I mean, we can sugarcoat it all we want, but at the end of the day, you have to make a decision that if I'm not getting what I want, that I'm trying to get out of this is my career we're talking about. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it happen, and that means putting pressure on my teacher, or leaving and making those complaints like we're just outlined.
You get what you put in.
Exactly. Exactly. And to your point, like when you were taking classes online, you put into it and you get out what you put into it.
But yeah, that's a great point though. If you say 50%, now all I have to do is 50%. Now I'm all online. I don't even have to have a brick and mortar or anything, really, honestly. That's why I was saying, like, just limited to just a certain portion. Other theory, and like what Tamika was talking about, I think it's a part of the problem is that we're stuck. We're stuck with this thing that's already in place that we cannot change. That's not necessarily it's not the best. You know what I'm saying, with the whole apprenticeship thing. And I've never been a fan of the apprenticeship situation at all. But I think we're stuck with that, and that can't move, and that's cool. We've already come to that conclusion, but we're trying to base something new on something old, that old thing ain't necessarily good.
Agreed. The vagueness was already put in place when they said you have the responsibility of developing a curriculum of up to 50% theory. Theory was never referenced in rules or statute before that point, but yeah, here we're at. So I'll stop talking. I know you guys are the important people, but yeah, just whatever you all think, let me know.
And Mr. Martin, you pointed up something that not to bring us back if the board doesn't want to go down the path of the general, the physical, and the chemical hours are different by course type. I mean, we could leave the 50-50 out. And frankly, Joe started thinking down that realm. I kind of deviated because apprenticeship is happening a lot.
Right.
And they are doing it virtually. There
Right.
are schools that are only doing the 50% virtually, because I hear from the students, right? But
I need to, yeah, Roxanne, go ahead. I want to step in as a business owner when you're done.
yes, so that is happening. We need to keep in mind, this is here to be flexible to the students. So we can't limit everything and put it as much as we'd like to really lock it in, because then the flexibility for the students sort of disappears. But if we're looking at leaving aside apprenticeship, letting it do its thing, and looking at general, physical, and chemical hours, and back to sort of Joe's point as well, what can't be done in a distance learning model, his rules could address. If you're looking for cosmetology hours, here's what can be done, synchronous or distance learning, and here's what can't. And we address each of the courses based on those hours, just because you'd pointed that out. Yes, Amy.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to make a point that, you know, as a business who's been doing this for almost 20 years, right? I want to remind the group that during COVID, we were hiring students who never touched a client and were 1,500 hours in the classroom. So we have experience, right? And we are hiring people today who have gone to Middle Tennessee schools who have extremely limited information, right? So when you say there's a possibility, or I should say information and skills, and because of that, I think my business and many other businesses have set up our own training courses, our own training departments, that when the scary part of a student only going to school online and then coming out into a shop seems like a deal breaker, I mean, I would tell you we've already seen that. I mean, that's the reality that we went through, especially during COVID and the years after. And that, is it great to hire people from really reputable schools who have all the education? Absolutely. Do I have enough of those folks to fill all my open positions right now? I don't. So I think there's also a supply and demand here of what the marketplace really needs from graduates and what the opportunities are there. But I think ultimately, you know, if someone is applying at my business who has only an online theory education and has never touched a person, you know, that will be up to the shop who's hiring of whether they want that responsibility or not. And Roxanne, I think you bring up a really good point. I had not heard that there are communities that are having a hard time placing these apprentice students. But, you know, that is a difficult decision. And shops, of course, are not obligated to take these students once they their theory. That's worse. So I just think there's a lot of different ways to look at this, but I'm not concerned about the students who are not learning per se, because we already have that going on right now.
The reason that I had proposed 50% via distance education is because we already have those apprenticeship schools that are doing it via distance education. They are providing 750. And I don't want us to put into rule something that's going to backpedal and say, well, what you've been doing is no longer correct, and now you've got to bring these students in. So in keeping everything kind of streamlined, I would suggest no more than 50% via distance education. We can debate that back and forth however you would like, but I think that we need to first establish, do we want to set a limit of how much education can be delivered via distance education? After we decide that, then I think we need to decide within those parameters, do we want to limit what can be delivered via synchronous or asynchronous?
Correct. Yes, I agree.
And Ms. Russell, I love your guidance as usual. You've got it. I am perfectly good, members. If you all are doing just a quick roll call vote, and the question would be, before we proceed on the next level of what else do we do with this 50%? Do we say, but you can't do X, Y, Z? Do we dive into the different course types? Would you like me to do roll call vote to just check? And that would be the question. Are you okay? Is your preference to limit the 50%? And then we continue working. It's a yes or no.
I'd like to see that as a roll call. Yes.
Okay. All right, members, I will give you a second and I will go through and mark. And it's yes, 50% sounds good to me, or no, it doesn't. We need to look at it from a different perspective. Ms. Susan Arnold,
Yes.
Ms. Bernetta Charlton,
Yes.
Ms. Monica Lemons,
Yes.
Mr. Marquise Martin,
No.
Mr. Jeff Moran,
Yes.
Ms. Lane Petty,
Yes.
Ms. Becky Russell,
Yes.
Ms. Amy Tansley,
Yes.
Ms. Lori Turner,
Yes.
and Ms. Tamika Turner.
No.
Okay. We have 10 members participating, 2 no's. So the yes have it. And we would continue at least as that basis right now with the 50%. And then Joe, any other language you need on top of that, I'll let you move forward.
Okay, so now that we've basically assembled the 50% virtual, the conversation now becomes very specific to synchronous, which the board has been approving up to this point in time, the live teaching, via virtual video versus asynchronous, and what the limitations on asynchronous education, because I believe that's the concern of the board, which is not live instruction, what those want to be. And that's completely up to you. But now we're within our 50%. So now we're looking at what you want to limit asynchronous, which would be the not live video to.
And my suggestion to the board for this portion would be 10%, up to 10% could be asynchronous, meaning no more for cosmetology or barbering, no more than 150 hours could be taught asynchronous. Leaving, if they chose to, 40% in addition to that could be taught synchronous to make up the entire 50% distance.
Say that one more time for me, Ms. Russell. That last part.
Okay, so the distance education in total would be 50%. Only 10% could be taught as asynchronous, leaving like a maximum of 10%. So if a school chose to do asynchronous, they could do 10% asynchronous, and they could choose to do 40 additional percent as synchronous, or they could choose to do the entire 50% synchronous. But within their distance education model, no more than 10% would be allowable to be asynchronous.
My counter to that is unless we have a way to monitor that, it doesn't matter.
I like what I think it was Joe said earlier. I'd rather tell them what they can't teach asynchronously rather than giving them a time limit on it.
I agree.
So can you run down a list?
I think we have to take that by each program. I think we have to look at the aesthetic program. I think we have to look at the barbering program, the cosmetology program, and look at each of them individually and decide what doesn't need to be taught asynchronously versus otherwise.
So if that is true, I think we're going to need some more time to look over that, because that's going to take a long period of time to do that. I have been doing a lot of research leading up to this meeting, knowing that it was coming. I would suggest that each of you all get online and look at, it's something called the Nevada report. I actually printed them out, or printed a couple of copies out for you all to look at in case this had come up during our meeting. But it's called the Nevada report, and it's identifying risk in beauty services. And the reason that I would suggest that you all look at that is it tells the risk that happened during a specific beauty service. And that will tell you how risky a service is. So if you're looking at hair color, if you're doing that service, it will tell you exactly what the risks are. The risk, I've lost one of my note papers, but the risk go from, it breaks them down by steps, and then it says, for instance, one of the highest risk areas is dip nail service. It has 35 steps, and at 74.3% of the steps cause a risk to the public. The risk include infections, malpractice and safety, and product reactions. So if you would look at that, I think that if you look at that and then look at our curriculum, then you could match those to the curriculum and say, based on the amount of risk that are associated with these, we feel like these should or could or should not be taught via distance education. I have looked at all of them, all of the services, and I forgot how many services that they have listed, but it includes styling, cutting, blow dry styling, all of the services. It does have facials on there. When looking through those, the steps that have risk associated with them on average is about 60.76% of the steps that are involved in a service have an associated risk with them. So I feel like, of course, high risk means that it needs to be taught somehow with an instructor.
Ms. Russell, does it mention natural hair on there?
There are some natural hair services, so it's not specific to cosmetology, because like hair cutting would go across the board for cosmetology or barbering, but it does have things like sew-ins. It has braiding.
Okay.
It's one of them. So you'll find a lot of these services, and it has aesthetic services, it has nail services. So I would just suggest that you all take a look at it. If you all would like, I can send a link to Roxana so that she can send a link out to you all. And the general public, if you want to see what I'm saying, again, it is the Nevada report identifying risk in beauty services. If you Google that, it'll be one of the first things that pop up. You can look at exactly what I was looking at as I was going through this, because I'm really trying to make good informed decisions for our students, the clients they will serve, as well as schools. This Nevada report is also...
Go right ahead, Becky.
I'm sorry. This is also what we use whenever I am kind of working with PSIs. I've done multiple times in writing the state board exams. We look at this heavily to decide what needs to go on the test based on the amount of risk there is.
Members, am I correct to conclude that we are comfortable with the 50%, but that for the April meeting, everyone will do a little bit of research to decide how we proceed with the next layer of language for our rules to possibly include what cannot be taught virtual? Does that, or by distance, does that sound correct?
My understanding would be it'd be a list of what cannot be taught asynchronously. So it could be taught virtually, which would be a synchronous course, but essentially we'd be looking at this point a list of carve outs or exceptions that cannot be taught specifically asynchronously.
If that sounds like our plan, and I'm watching Mr. Martin shake his head, and I think it is, then we've got homework. We pretty much have covered what we are looking at for this business, the proposed rules. The only thing that hasn't been touched on, yeah, that I don't believe you've got a question, but I'll let Joe fill you in.
Just quickly, I just want to make sure that we cover all the rules. The last proposed rule that I have in your packet is an added fee for the new cosmetology compact multi-state license. Roxana is working on that, getting that instituted with the multi-state organization that's going to be formed to take over the regulation of the state license. And it was based off of your estimation that that $50 would be adequate. So I wanted to bring that to the board's attention. I know that's a much smaller topic than distance education, but I wanted to be, completely upfront and honest of everything that was in this rulemaking packet.
So members, in this conversation, what I call a work session was wonderful. Given we've got guidance for the next step, I'm at that point of the public meeting or the new business. I want to make sure that if anyone is participating virtually, that they have an opportunity to ask questions, opine, give us information as based on what was presented, which of course covers this proposed rules. I know we have someone here that has been with us through the meeting, Ms. Lauren Davis, so I want to give her an opportunity to add or make comments to what we've done. Ms. Davis, thank you. Come on up. You've got it. Thank you. There you go.
Good afternoon. It's good to see you all in person and virtually. Thanks for having me again. I just made a couple of notes, and I definitely don't want to open up the whole debate period again. I just want to make a couple of public comments. One of the things was authorized institutions in the state of Tennessee do have to submit an annual report through THEC. So that data is available publicly on tn.gov. That does include completion and placement reporting. There isn't a specific licensure piece, but that may be something that as that discussion happens about these schools and the licensure rates, that data could tie in to that goal that one of the board members presented. The other thing I just wanted, to mention in all of this discussion, I personally see that there's an assumption that synchronous means engagement and synchronous means substantive interaction. And there's no guarantee of feedback in a synchronous environment, as one of the board members mentioned earlier. It could simply be an instructor reading a book. It is not a guarantee that it is a reciprocal interaction. So I just want to make that clear when we're defining that there's no rule or guidance that synchronous requires a back and forth period. It is assumed that there is one, but as you develop those laws, I would just ask that you keep that in mind. I would also ask that, this 10% that's thrown out for synchronous versus asynchronous, that it's not just an arbitrary number, that it's, data driven and not something that is personal judgment or personal opinion. In previous board meetings back in December, there was some data presented to the board that had Department of Education statistics that had real data that shows that asynchronous can be effective and is effective in a lot of modalities. Even in Tennessee, I know like the health board, a nursing license allows for asynchronous. So there are things that we can do to make this effective. So I just wanted to put both of those out. Our goal, is in previous discussions today, to talk about contingency plans where schools have, students having to drive an hour and a half, in case the school closed down. This can kind of alleviate some of those concerns that gives the students of Tennessee a choice. What school makes the best sense for me, and I'm not, restricted by proximity and where, I can drive through vehicle wise. The other thing, the last thing I wanted to mention was that with the apprenticeship program, the exam protects the public. There is an option from a school perspective, and we have a school in Georgia, and we have done this in the past, where if a program exceeded the state required length, the students were allowed to test at that point. There is an option to where if the exam protects the public, and we know that it does from a PSI standpoint, if a school is allowed to offer asynchronous or synchronous distance learning up to 50%, that the students are allowed to test that theory portion at the 50% mark and take the practical test, at the 1500 mark, using cosmetology as an example. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well when this is being debated. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, if you have anything else, now would be the time to add. I think I've looked through the names. I think we're okay with those participating virtually. If we have nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I've got us at 12:20, but I don't want to rush us if we're still going over any of this.
Joe, one last thing. I think that we need to ensure that in new school applications that students are aware that it's being offered in distance education, and I think you've got that in there, but what specifically is needed to participate. And I think that it says something about having a computer and online capabilities, but I think that the school itself needs to identify specifically, that it's not a 1985 Mac that somebody's trying to use for the class, but what specifically. I don't think that we need to oversee that as much as that school just needs to say it's requires Windows 95 or later or whatever the case might be. But
More
they
of a
need to-
disclosure as opposed to regulation.
Yes, I think that we need to make sure that when they make their enrollment agreement that they disclose exactly what is required.
Will do. I will add language to that effect.
Thank you, Becky. Members, do we have a motion to adjourn or anything else to discuss?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Marquise Martin and a second by Ms. Monica Lemons. As odd as that sounds, I'm going to do a quick roll call vote and we can adjourn. And again, thank you all for this meeting. It was wonderful, learned a lot, and we've got more to do, obviously, which is exactly why we're here. Ms. Susan Arnold,
Yes.
Ms. Bernetta Carlton,
Yes.
Monica Lemons,
Yes.
Mr. Marquise Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Jeff Moran,
Yes.
Ms. Lane Petty,
Yes.
Ms. Becky Russell,
Yes.
Ms. Amy Tansley,
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Lori Turner,
Yes.
and Ms. Tamika Turner.
Yes.
Thank you, members. It was great seeing you in person, virtually. We are adjourned. Thank you so much for everything. Be safe, please.
Thank you.